republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, so the first thing on our agenda tonight is the tax rate hearing. So we'll have Mr. Nord come up.
Okay. You guys hear me okay?
Yep.
And I'm sure Tony would tell me if he couldn't hear me. Thank you all for the opportunity to present the tax rate hearing for 2024. We haven't opened our regular meeting yet because this is our presentation to our community of what our tax rate is. Once we go into open session, we'll have an action item that will be put forth for you for any kind of questions or any kind of, we'll be requesting the approval of that tax rate. There we go. So just some general information about our tax rate. So voters approve our tax rate ceiling. So in 2013 was the last time that our voters passed an operating tax increase. The voters approved the tax rate ceiling, which is the maximum amount that we can set our tax rate at 4.33 for residential and 4.93 for commercial. Now, that's not what we're asking for tonight. That's just the voter-approved amount that was passed in the ballot agenda in 2023. The amounts that we're going to be asking for tonight will be later on in this presentation. We also have what are called calculated state tax ceilings. So that's a form that the Missouri State Auditors provide to us. We run our growth and our assessed valuations through that, and then that produces a maximum tax rate that we can ask our community, we can ask you to approve tonight and ask to pass on to our voters. We are in what's called a non-reassessment year. So most of the information that we're going to be presenting tonight is going to be growth and assessed valuation due to new construction. This tiny, tiny print here, and if you want to be bored to tears with my calendar, this is really the life cycle of a tax rate. So broad brushstrokes, by June 30th, we asked our school board to approve the budget for the following year. In September 15th through September 30th, we generally receive what we consider final numbers from the Board of Equalization through the assessor's office that we calculate our tax rate based upon. We do receive some preliminary figures. Those preliminary figures can vary wildly from what our final figures are that we receive in September. During December and February is when we primarily receive the funds from our local taxpayers. And those funds we use to provide for operations through the remainder of the year. 28 to 30% is what we're typically working with for the percentage of fund balance at the end of our year. And that's what we require in order to meet our expenditures up until November and December when we start receiving dollars from our local community again. So we're going to have a couple slides, factors impacting our tax rate. So we are in a non-reassessment year. So in our growth is primarily driven from new construction. We do have a couple items here that do impact us. So we have some growth in personal property taxes this year, about $1.1 million in assessed valuation. So you're going to see that as growth in new construction. It doesn't mean we constructed anything. It just means that the value of people's vehicles either appreciated or they bought new stuff and sold old stuff. So we are held to the Hancock Amendment, so that's 5% growth in assessed valuation, or the lesser of 3.4% in CPI. You're going to see this year the growth in our revenue is going to be higher than that because new construction acts outside of the Hancock Amendment. We also have what's called Prop C rollback, so any local taxes that are collected from the state of Missouri, we have to repay 50% of that back to our stakeholders through a reduction in our sales tax, in our levy. That is 9 cents. It's very consistent to what we've paid in prior years. Last year, that amount was 9 cents 37. That equates to about $467,000 that we repay our community through tax reduction. This is very consistent with what we've had in previous years in dollar amount and in the levy rollback. We're also going to be presenting a recoupment. And just as in, the same as in years past, we're asking for a recoupment on commercial property. It's about 8 cents. Last year it was closer to 12 cents, so this is a lesser amount. We're recouping from 2 years previous. So basically, people had taxes, they said they're being taxed too high, and then we paid that, we have that reduced through a credit. This is asking for that amount to be repaid to us that other people didn't pay. That equates to about $144,000 or 8.8 cents. Some other items. We've talked about senior citizens tax freeze. Senior citizens tax freeze was put into place and adopted by St. Louis County. Just to give some, last year we talked about what's the potential impact of this. So it's not completely straightforward. So based on census data, 15% of Brentwood residents are above the age of 65. Doesn't necessarily mean that every individual that's above this age of 65 owns a home. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're not 2 people in that home. It just means that 15%. So roughly what that would be is if we had a growth of 3% in assessed valuation, and we had a freeze of that full 15%, our 3% growth would look more like 2.55%. So it doesn't impact our previous collections. It impacts and reduces our ability to increase taxes from this year going forward on senior citizens.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Does that include personal property
No.
as well as their resident?
Only real property.
Only real property.
And it's only the one property that they reside within the majority of their time. So if they own multiple properties, it doesn't apply to them.
That was going to be my next question.
Now you could ask, how do the different counties compare that? They probably don't. So not to get too deep into that one, there's a lot of complexities. I'm more than happy to share any information that we have from the county with any of the board members. It will not impact this year. The first year that it'll go into effect will be next year. The opening for the applications will happen beginning of next month. It will go through December. We will find out the impact of that hopefully in November. That's what statute states. They are allowed to collect credits until June 30th, I believe, of 2025. I don't want to talk people through this, how to apply for it, but it is, the application is available on St. Louis County, St. Louis County Assessor's website. So the big items, and I want to draw attention to this, we've always talked about tax abatements and tips and reducing our assessed valuations. So this is a kind of an anomaly year. Last year we were anticipating the Meridian project to expire. It's worth about $18.8 million of commercial property. That property was submitted by the city of Brentwood as expired in March of this year. So, and then they also reported Hanley Station as being paid off early. So Hanley Station is 3 years early. So the city of Brentwood paid off the debt for Hanley Station 2 years early. So these two things are unanticipated. $18.8 million, we had anticipated 19. They protested their taxes, they were successful, they're at 18.8 now. They've never paid taxes until now. The residential assessed valuation on Hanley Station is early. The $6 million was what we had in our projections, but we had it built 3 years down the road. These amounts, and along with new construction, will produce just shy of $1 million additional funding into operations this year. Reassessment changes. So again, we're seeing some big growth here, especially in commercial. You're seeing 13%. This is all of this except for about $1 million is due to the expiration of the TIFs. So the majority of the growth that you're seeing here, even on the residential side, is due to TIF expirations. The total amount of growth is 6.6%. Residential grew by 3.7%, commercial grew by 13.2%, and you'll see a small amount of personal property growth increase of about 2%. Just to put a visual together for how we're seeing our growth, the dark purple, I think, I'm colorblind, so I amount for total assessed valuation growth. You'll see that there's limited growth in the commercial side, but there is a strong growth on the residential side. We are seeing more and more of our assets and our levy and our support from our community being leveraged against our residential community. In order to continue to appreciate their investment in our schools, we have historically, and we're asking again tonight, to only apply recoupments against the commercial assets. This is where we're talking about our protested taxes. So settled taxes. You'll see that the amount of protested taxes equates to a recoupment of about $144,000. I am on the wrong slide.
You were there and then it
I
went,
apologize. I look up, I look down. So about $144,000. If we were to recoup the amount from residential, which we're not asking to do, it only equates to about $6,000 this year. So it is in this particular 2-year look back. It's relatively inconsequential. And we want to continue to encourage our community to support our school district, and whenever possible, be able to provide that back. This is, I've got a accordion file back there that shows what I do to do the recoupment. We have to recalculate all of our previous years that are impacted, and then we have to recalculate the most recent year as well. Yeah?
So the commercial property that we lost on Manchester Road because of the potential redevelopment, is that included in?
No. So any property, depending on, so any assets that are owned by a municipality. So if we're talking about a religious organization, a nonprofit, a municipality such as the school district, or a city, those assets are no longer considered to be even included in assessed valuation. So they are removed before we can even see the asset. So we can still look up to see what the property is valued at, but we'll never see that on the total assessed valuation. We also don't get to claim that as part of a recoupment. So we are asking for 25 cents in the capital projects fund. This produces about $1 million a year to fund capital projects. This is in alignment with our projections. The other item that I want to draw attention to is because we're adding an unexpected $1 million into operation this year, we are asking to maintain the 25 cents in capital projects. So we are adding money into operations, just like we've requested and communicated previously, but we are asking for the similar to maintain the levy in capital projects for this year. Debt service fund. We do have a legally segregated dollar amount and levy to pay for our general obligation debt. These dollars are maintained in a separate bank account. They're also in a separate set of accounts. So most recently in 2020, I believe, we approved $29 million of general obligation debt that funded our 2 elementary projects. That increased our levy to 89 cents. We did have a multi-year phased roll-in of that rate. We did it over the course of 2 years. This does equate to 89 cents. We are asking to maintain that levy. We are confident that that will sufficiently fund our general obligation debts for the next 2 years, which is what we're allowed to use in our calculation. And over time. 2024 recommendations for property tax by category. Just to, if we've got questions, feel free. We did see a reduction in total residential tax rate by less than 1%. We saw a reduction in commercial property tax rate by less than 1%, and personal property remained relatively stable. Blended tax rates. Again, we're seeing the majority of this is stable. We're not seeing any growth. This is a non-reassessment year, so again, all of our growth in revenue is being driven from new construction. So you'll see our tax rates really didn't move radically here. Revenue by source. So this is new revenue. So residential, we're seeing about $300,000 or 3% growth in residential income. Commercial, you see that big growth number of $874,000 or almost 13%. Again, this is due to, I'm going to keep saying this, new construction due to the expiration of the TIFs that are about $18 million. Personal property is a small increase of about 2%. So total growth is about $1.2 million, of which $974,000. So when we're saying almost $1 million, this is assuming 95% collection rate. So that $1.2 million is assuming 95. We have been receiving our funding between 95 and 97% collection rate historically. So we're confident that the 95% at this time is a strong figure. It's conservative, so we do have a little bit of room in there for our collections.
Do we have any more TIFs out there coming down the road?
So we could probably talk to the school board or in finance, and I don't. I'll talk about it as long as you guys want to, but I don't want to take up too much time. We don't have any TIFs is the short answer. The little bit more complicated answer is we have what are called 353s. So the Manchester corridor projects are 353s. They're not TIFs. So we have abatements, but we don't have specifically TIF projects.
I just thought that was important for the community to know, like, this is great that we've gotten this money, we've gotten it early, but as a taxpayer, I'd like to, it's good for me to know that, okay, we don't have any of this coming 2
We're not
years,
gonna
3
get
years, or
another
4.
Yeah.
This isn't gonna happen again.
Yeah.
So that's,
This is very nice
One-time-
right now.
Right.
One-time thing.
It
yeah.
is, yeah, we don't have any other ones dangling out there.
But that increase is each year. It went up this million or whatever, and it'll continue to be at that level.
Yes.
It's not gonna keep going up that much each year,
No.
but it's just moved the line.
It's a one-time growth, and especially in a non-reassessment year. But we'll go into reassessment next year. So there's factors that say whether or not, based on inflation. The Fed's working to try to control inflation right now. So with 50 basis points being reduced from the federal tax reserve and the federal interest rates, that hope potentially, shouldn't take a side on this, potentially will start to control inflation. That's the intention. So if that happens, right now we've seen inflation rates around anywhere from 3.5% to 7%. So the good thing is that helps community members with the cost of living. The bad thing for school districts is that limits our ability to continue to increase revenue streams at the percentage increases we've been seeing over the last 3 years. All right, so this is not an action item. This is solely the recommendations to our school board. We're asking for a residential tax rate. So just to be clear, before I go into this, I'm going to ask for two different things. One is going to be our multi-factor rate, which is by property subclass. So that's where we see residential, commercial, personal property. And it's going to look like I'm going to ask for another tax increase tax rate. The other tax rate is what's called a blended rate or a single rate. They're both used for different organizations for how we report them. One's to the state of Missouri and one's to the assessor's office. They both are designed to provide the same revenue source. This is the revenue stream that we're going to be asking the collector's office to apply. The next one will be the one that we ask for the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. So we are asking for a residential rate of 4.0452 to be levied on every $100 of assessed valuation, or that would be 3.1462 to operations and 89 cents for debt service. Commercial rate 5.045, operating amount 4.1655, debt service of 89 cents, personal property 4.9063. Operations would be about $4, debt service would be 89 cents. These amounts are inclusive of Prop C rollback amounts and recoupments. Collection of commercial, we're also asking for the recoupment of a one-time levy that's included in the previously stated amounts of 8 cents, 0.84. We're asking to decline the residential recoupment to be applied for the 2024 year. Blended rates, we're asking to set the following tax rates as followed. Incidental rate, and this is where we talk about operations, 3.3589. 25 cents to be applied to capital projects, and then debt service to remain at 89 cents for a total blended rate of 4.5071. Any questions?
Why, on slide 12, I noticed that there's a discrepancy in personal. It says 4.0963, then it says 4.9063.
I don't have them.
It's probably just a typo or something.
So we went through, I know that I went back and forth with a board member about making sure that this aligns to our collection rate. I'm more than happy to look at any particular line item and report back.
Okay. It looks like it's just, it might be a typo, but I just want to make sure since it's on here.
Let me take a note of that and I can look into that.
Okay.
You said slide 12 for personal property?
Yeah, property category at the bottom right, under personal 2024, it says 4.0963,
Okay, I will take a
and
look
then
at
in this slide it says 4.9063.
that.
I
Let
don't
me
know
get
if
you an
it matters or
answer,
not, but it's.
because all of these should be flowing in from a spreadsheet. There shouldn't be, if there is a discrepancy between the two, I want to be able to explain what that is.
Okay. I'll show you.
I'm going to go look it up on my computer. All
He'll
right.
have an answer before the end.
Yes, he will.
I see what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's probably
It
not.
might be just
It looks like
it's
a typo.
0.09, yeah, I see it. It's between slide 12 and then the recommendation mark on slide
Okay, yeah,
16.
it's just a typo.
I think it's
That's a good catch.
the number, or slide 12.
Yeah.
I know.
And you watch my face turn bright red.
It's no big
Math, none of us.
deal. You're human.
Yeah,
No,
it's
that's not what I
okay.
said, 'cause I was
Thank
going
you,
back
Matt.
and
We will
forth
not lose
about
any
it.
sleep over it tonight, Matt. So.
Yeah, we're all being okay. I know you will.
All right, are there any other questions?
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Kate, can we call our meeting to order? Oh, sorry, I did the Pledge of Allegiance too soon, but we won't do it twice. We did it once already. Okay, thanks.
Okay, let's see, Mark Cicero,
Here.
Brian Dodson.
Here.
Brian Flynn.
Here.
Keith Reichenberg,
Here.
Terry Trussell,
Here.
Katie Spall,
Here.
Lindsey Spencer.
Here. All right, thank you. And were there any written in citizens' comments, Kate?
I didn't know.
Okay. Great, so then that brings us to Tony with Spotlight on Brentwood.
We have lots of exciting things to celebrate, and a big shout out to the Brentwood community for this last weekend. It was an amazing thing for me as a first timer. It was an amazing weekend in the Brentwood School District. I know Tony has lots of great things to highlight, but one publicly state.
Yeah.
Very impressive.
It's very fun.
All right, so for our second spotlight on Brentwood for the month of September, and if you guys remember from last time, we tried to organize them in our big buckets of our strategic plan, right? So our first one that we have is student success, and I told Lindsay that I'm gonna milk this photo for all that I can. Before we talk about what's been happening this year, I just want to go back for the first two to the 23-24 school year, and this is just a visual example of success and post-secondary education at Brentwood High School. But this photo represents Brentwood High School students saving more than $60,000 in college tuition for the 23-24 school year as part of the St. Louis Community College dual credit program. That's $60,000. It's $60,000 and change. A $23,000 increase from the last year. So a great growth in that program in just 1 year. Just some of the numbers: 38 students were enrolled in at least one dual credit or dual enrollment course last year, earning a total of 170 credit hours. So, and saving families, over $60,000 in college tuition. So when money's tight and everything adds up, this is our opportunity to help families save money. And this is not the only partnership we have. We also have partnerships with Lindenwood University, with the University of Missouri St. Louis. And kids can also earn college credit through AP courses and things like that. So, but that's just one of the good ones that we want to highlight. So, and the second one from the 23-24 school year. This is a picture of our math team at Brentwood Middle School. And for those folks, Brentwood Middle School students experienced exceptional academic growth in 23-24, specifically in math. I love her math shirt. My wife is a middle school English teacher, and she has tons of like books and reading shirts and stuff. And it was just fun to see a math shirt. But looking specifically at our math NWEA scores, 7th graders showed remarkable progress on their math assessments. Every single 7th grader, now 8th graders, but every single 7th grader increased their score from fall to spring. 13 kids increased it 16 or more points. And this was not just isolated to 7th graders. Our 6th graders, or 98% of 6th graders improved their scores, and 88% of 8th graders demonstrated growth. So just a great example of student success, learning, growth, and achievement. I know last year was also the first year for Marissa St. Clair as the 6 through 12 math interventionist. So I think that had a lot to do with it. And I think if you guys remember going through that and approving that, I think that made a big difference. And that was kind of an integral part of that growth. So just a good story. So now we go to this year. And this is a collage. So we'll start at the top left and work our way around clockwise. So the first two, or the one in the top left is Brentwood High School Student Council recently hosted its clubs and activities fair. So all the high school kids started in the auditorium. New this year, all the middle school 8th graders were also in that assembly. Each club got up, they talked about their, what they do, how much fun it is, how they can get involved, where the signups are, things like that. Everybody gave their spiel, went out into the commons, they had a bunch of tables set up. These two students right here are signing up for our high school Scholar Bowl team, and that little Missouri-shaped plaque there is the 4th place trophy from our state tournament last year, so a very successful program. On the middle school side, so some of the clubs are not yet ready for middle school students, but the high school wanted it to include 8th graders just as a whole. Some of them, they're able to sign up right away and start participating, and then some of them are at second semester will start and things like that. So just to kind of give them an idea of what's coming and what they can expect and all the opportunities. Just kind of for some numbers, Brentwood High School has over 40 school-sponsored clubs, sports, and activities, and 70% of students are actively participating in at least one extracurricular opportunity. So I know many of you have at least one or more in one or more things. So just a good story. Moving over to the right, that is a photo from a recent college fair. So all Brentwood High School juniors attended a college fair at Webster University on Tuesday, September 10th. Students were able to meet with representatives from more than 75 colleges and universities from across the United States. So when we talk about post-secondary pathways and education and opportunities, this was just a great way for all of the junior class to go over to Webster and work their way around the gym, talk to these folks, get some ideas, and plant that seed and get that going. Not that it's not already planted, but to start making it real, that they can start making connections and things like that. So a good opportunity. Down below, Dr. Zielinski shaking hands with a student as part of the Catalyst program. So Dr. Zielinski was doing mock interviews for Catalyst students. If you guys don't know, Catalyst is an innovative entrepreneurial approach to education that allows students from Brentwood, Clayton, and Ladue to find their passions, develop their skills, and explore post-secondary pathways. Students are immersed in a professional culture. They get to solve real-world problems, connect with industry and business professionals, work internships, all while receiving high school credit. So, and just another example of growth. Last year, we had 2 high school students in Catalyst. This year, we have 12 in the program. So, a great example of growth and a great program and a real-world program, a post-secondary pathways type program, things that align directly with our strategic plan. And I didn't know she was going to be here. I didn't do that on purpose. It's not on purpose. But, and then that last picture, this is just a great example of hands-on learning at Mark Twain. Second graders in that brand new renovated STEM space at Mark Twain Elementary School. Kids doing a seed growth experiment. So students brainstormed what plants need to, grow and thrive. They decided to pick sunlight and water as their control groups, and they had dill and marigold seeds as their control factors. So they planted them with help. They'll water them, they'll give them sunlight in different variations to see which combinations work best for growth of those 2 particular plants or seeds. All right, so on to our school culture. This was fantastic. So our 6th grade camp, right? And I thought about doing a collage, but I was like, no, I want all of them to be separate photos. So I'll kind of scroll through them. So if you didn't know, Brentwood Middle School 6th graders, last week they had a blast at 6th grade camp at the Touch of Nature Outdoor Education Center. It was just right outside of Carbondale, Illinois. Students developed their communication, collaboration, and critical thinking skills while engaging in outdoor activities, harness climbing, archery, team building activities and obstacles, and then some educational activities like water ecology and things like that. It was all about learning, growing, and making memories that, we might not remember certain things from middle school, but we're going to remember, our 6th grade camp. So archery.
This is a new location compared to where we've been going in the
Yes.
past.
So archery.
The students taught me archery. I would
Yes.
like to just state that Ruby, 6th grader Ruby taught me how, and I hit the, I mean, I didn't hit the bullseye, but I hit the bull.
So, and then harness climbing, there were a couple different ones. These were really fun. So there was just kind of like a straight up telephone pole with handles on the side. So they would strap them into a harness. They would climb up. It was cool to see kids get out of their comfort zone. Some went all the way to the top and were like, yeah, I'm up here. And then some kind of went halfway and were like, okay, I'm good. And then a couple just went up a few rungs. But, it for them to just feel comfortable and safe to be able to do those kind of things and kind of come out of their shell with their peers around them was really cool to see. So an example of team building. So different concrete blocks and planks and trying to connect things and get everybody moved around from one side to the other. Those were interesting. Definitely team building and overcoming obstacles. And then an example of water ecology. Kids were fishing mud and water out of the lake and then dumping it into plastic bins and searching for invertebrate organisms and things like that. So it was interesting. It was very muddy right there.
It was
And
maybe a little
some
muddier than
some
the kids
were
expected.
some students were more concerned than others with
Yes.
their shoe choices
Uh-huh.
and can I wash my shoes and what am I going to do with my shoes when this is over.
We probably just need to clarify the old shoes
Yeah.
for the future.
Not
I don't think they
white.
quite understood what that meant, if it's okay.
But just a great opportunity, and I know Dr. Zelensky went. I asked her if I could tag along because I know as we start doing these type of things, we're going to want to have visual examples of our kids doing things. So, you can tell someone until you're blue in the face about 6th grade camp and how great it is, or you can show them this, or you can show them kids in harnesses strapped in and climbing poles, and that really hits it home, and so to have those things kind of in our toolbox that we can use and show people to help promote the things we're trying to do. So, and then kind of like last time when we talked about unified community engagement, and it felt like so long ago, but it was only like just a couple days ago. Yeah. So for our unified community engagement, our first one was the Brentwood Community 5K and Fun Run. So really a true partnership between the Brentwood Middle School PTO, Brentwood Middle School, the district as a whole, the city of Brentwood, to let us tag along as part of Brentwood Days, to really make it an official part of Brentwood Days. It wasn't just like, oh, you guys are doing it. The city helped us promote it. They put their, they shared our information on their Facebook page. They put it in their e-newsletters and things like that. So it blew me away. It was very well done for a very first inaugural event. And you're like, there's going to be some, we forgot something, or there's going to be bumps in the road or something like that. This was just very smooth and very well done. I'm sure there's things that are, can be done better next year, but it didn't feel like a first year event. It felt like a well-oiled machine. So it was very well done.
Awesome.
So.
Excellent, nice job, Kate.
Yeah.
And
Excellent job.
Yeah.
Yes.
Amazing.
And this was hard too, but I like this photo the best. What I want to know is, why is Dr. Johnson trying to take that? No, he's not. He was giving it. But once again, just a great example of community and spirit. This was now my third Brentwood Days parade. This was the biggest I'd ever seen it, both from the participants in the parade, from the community members along the parade route. There was just a different vibe. It was just great to see. We had a great turnout. We tried some new things this year to increase our presence in the parade and in Brentwood Days in general. And I think it went really well. So it gave us kind of like a baseline of what we were able to do, and then looking into the spring and planning and having months to plan and get things more organized. What can we do to make it even better? So, but just a great community event. So, any questions?
Thank you for putting this
That was
together.
outstanding.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
A lot of great things happening.
Yes, very much so.
Are we still doing college tours as well? Do we take the juniors to the two universities and do like a field trip, do you know?
I don't know. Not off the top of my
Because
head.
I don't know if any reason it would have changed. If so, it's been happening, I assume, but I can find out.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
All right, so if I could get a motion to approve the consent agenda. as stated.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda as outlined. Second.
Discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that is approved and moves us into our superintendent's report.
Okay, first up is calling Matt Norwood back to the front for the setting of the tax rate.
Thank you all for listening to me for 20 minutes before the regular session. I do want to point out, I did check, Mark, you're absolutely correct. And Carrie's correct. There's a transposition on page 12 where the tax rate for personal property was set at it states 4.096 It should have been 4.9063. It is reported correctly on the summary and the request and the memo. So those items that we have for action are correct and agree back to our calculations. I apologize for the inconvenience, making notes so that that won't happen going forward. So the item that we have that we're requesting for approval tonight is setting the tax rate as stated previously. Each year we are required to present, as we stated previously, the tax rate for the Board of Education. We are asking to set our tax rates at the calculated tax rate ceilings. A blended rate of 3.6089 for 100. Maintaining 89 cents for our debt service account. And then on the multi rate for by subclass, residential 3.1462, commercial 4.1655, and personal property of 4.0073. These numbers will look slightly different from the presentation because they don't include the 89 cents of debt service. We are asking for all of those tax rates to be asked and approved as presented.
Okay, make a motion that we set the tax rates as outlined.
Second.
Discussion?
So just as we look at kind of our next 5 to 10 year forecast, how does setting the tax rates right now and also, learning about the senior citizen, how does that impact when we plan to go back? Where does our operating fund stand? Will it still be above 30% in 2028, 2029?
So the approval of the expiration of the TIFs will actually improve our long-term outlook.
Okay.
It's difficult to project what the full impact of the senior citizens tax rates is going to be. There's some other things in the state that could potentially impact us that are going up for legislation this year, so we're continuing to watch different political avenues that are going on. One of them is reducing the amount of assessed valuation that's applied to different property subclasses. That could radically impact public education. Those are hypotheticals. The senior citizen tax increase going forward, we believe that our figures on our projections are conservative enough to include that, and not because we're talking about a 0.5% impact to our growth. Our bigger risks are the consumer price index being controlled rather than the senior citizen tax freeze.
Okay. Thank you.
And you said 15% of our community is?
So it's what the, based on the census data, it stated that anyone in Brentwood City above the age of 65 was 15%.
Because that's quite a bit less than it was when we started years ago doing
I-
Prop K. It was like
I- that sounds-
85% when I started Prop K.
Number 65 on.
Yes, yes.
Wow.
So I was just I was wondering if those were really accurate. I mean, that's great.
The data I pulled
So
from
getting
was
younger.
from U.S. Census.
Yeah.
The data I pulled was from U.S. Census Bureau. I didn't pull something based on a demographer from the city. I just wanted to have some information to be able to give something that was relevant. If there's something that's more accurate and more current, we would like to know because it will impact our assumptions.
And I do think it'll take another year or so before we're even going to see the difference, because I know just a couple of my neighbors, they've tried 3 times. And every time they go and they inquire about this, they're told, oh, no, not yet. Oh, no, not yet. So I
The senior
think,
citizens tax freeze?
yes.
So I hate to say this, in the presentation, on the slide for senior citizens tax, all of that information is directly on the St. Louis County Assessor's website. They walk you through the application is out there, all of the deadlines are out there. They are required to do an annual submission, so it's not a one and done. One of the complications that we're seeing is a lot of this communication is being done digitally. So, potentially, not trying to stereotype anybody, but you have a group that could be less or more averse to using technology, and all of this is being communicated through technology. So we don't know we have no idea what percentage of folks are actually going to apply and be successful.
And then again, not to repeat it, but to repeat it, since I've been on the board, there were so many different TIFs that we knew were coming off and coming off, and I think it's really important to state, we do not have any more tips, because that's what I kept looking for the whole time my kids have been in Brentwood, and I have my last one leaving. So I think it's very important that the community is told there are no more tips, because we were always banking on
Waiting
those.
for them,
You know.
the money.
And I will say that the city has been very aggressive with paying these off in a fast manner. So getting their payment, and I mean, I know that people are paying the taxes, which provides the revenue to pay off the debt, but they could have sat on an escrow.
And the next
Yeah.
thing we need to do is get Manchester back, so that we can start getting more properties back onto those properties that are empty right now. So.
All right, any
With the, sorry, one more question. With the senior freeze, how would that impact us? Would those come through on the next year's assessor valuations? Their individual properties on that roll would just be at the lower level?
So it's not a straightforward answer. The way that the legislation's written is that the assessment still continues. So the properties still continue, in the current design, so the properties still continue to be assessed. What the senior citizens receive next year is during collections, they receive a credit. So when they pay their tax bill, they're not actually going to receive cash or a payment. They're going to see a credit show up as a discount on their bill. It's right now, we're assuming that the properties are going to see the freeze on the assessed valuation roll. We're not quite clear about that yet, and this will not go into effect until the 2025 tax levy. So all the filings are happening now. The impact won't go into, we won't see the impact until next year.
I guess I'm the one person in the room that can apply, huh?
Let us know
You
how it
should.
goes.
And you
As
should. You got a laptop?
Maybe it will.
All right. Any more questions for Matt? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, those tax rates are set. Thank you.
Matt's going to stick around for adult meal prices.
Each year we are required, so we go through a process of state auditing for Department of Elementary and Secondary Education for food service. Last year, they brought to our attention that we need to be assessing our adult meal prices every year, as well as what we put in front of you all for requests of price changes for our student meals. What we have in front of you today, or this evening, is a recommendation to increase meal prices for our adults. There it is. We are asking for an increase of 42 cents. That amount would go into effect next week, and we would communicate that out to our staff. This isn't something that we're wanting to necessarily do. This is the recommendation and the requirements of the state of Missouri in order for us to remain in compliance. So we are making the recommendation to increase meal prices for adults to $4.97 from $4.55, which is a 42-cent increase.
Make a motion to approve the adult meal prices as outlined.
Second.
Discussion?
Is there an age, so if we have children who are seniors turning 18, will they be considered an adult?
No,
Or is this only for staff?
Staff.
it's employees.
Okay.
It doesn't affect anyone that's a student with our district.
And then do we know approximately how many of our staff members eat through the school district?
We can give you numbers on that. Right now, I primarily watch deficit balances, so I could probably answer that one for you. But the number of adults that we sell on a regular basis, I could provide that back to the board if they're interested.
I'm just curious.
We report it monthly, and I just saw the number, but I couldn't, for the last month, but I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. Here we go.
Usually I watch the revenues, so I'm not necessarily watching.
He's looking at the
revenues.
dollars.
I guess the other question I have is, so for our students, we have the free and reduced lunch program. For employees, Is there anything that is available for them if they have hardships that they can apply who eat through our school already that could have some kind of free and reduced?
So through the school district, unless there's something external, like we don't have the ability to subsidize an adult meal through the school district. We're technically prohibited from doing it because all of the meals that we serve are subsidized in some fashion through Department of Ed and Department of Ag.
That's we would cover all the bases.
That's a good question.
Good question.
And as a question, last month, being August, was the first month we submitted in, it was a short month, so any totals that you get regarding adult meals might be less than they would be.
Yeah,
going
we can get a
forward.
ballpark total.
That's good.
Yeah,
Prior year.
for sure.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
I'm in favor. I just want to make sure we really know the 18-year-old is not an
Yeah.
issue.
For sure, yeah.
No.
It's okay. That was unanimous then, okay.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
We are going to call up Dr. Trevina Hostetler with the SSD Partnership Agreement presentation.
Hello, everybody. There's a lot of choices up here. I'm not sure how I feel about all of them.
There's a lot of them.
And this is not Google's.
It's,
There we go.
Perfect. Thank you for having me. You guys, we sent this out, so I'm gonna hit the highlights, unless you would like me to go through everything.
Whatever, you're a little hard to say.
That's dangerous. I wanted to take a moment to start off and introduce to you guys Dr. Chad Lent. He is Executive Director of Partner Districts, and he is my direct supervisor within Special School District. Part of what you'll see throughout the partnership agreement is an increase with Special School District and more of our central office being visible and out in school districts and touring classrooms and really getting an idea of what it looks like in our schools. It's been very intentional through the change in leadership in some of our structures. So that's why he's here this evening. And then I put Ronnie on there as well as our liaison, but she's got a lot of presentations, so I'll cover this one.
Won't make her stand up today.
Really, our role as partners, this is, you'll see this is formalized presentation from Special School District, and really it's to give that background and understanding of the partnership between Special School District and Brentwood. We do this every year, and then also when we had our new board members come on, I met with them individually and explained the partnership and the background of it. IDEA, we talk about that quite a bit, which is the Individuals with Disability Act, and that is really what governs us here and why special school district and special education exist. It is federal law. Always the reminder that when we say special school district, sometimes there's a misconception that special education and special school district can be used interchangeably. So special education is what we have due to IDEA. Special school district just happens to be who provides it in St. Louis County. But the rules and regulations are the same across the state of Missouri. All of those are set by DESE for us to implement. And I will be honest with you guys, that is something I explain to families quite often in IEP meetings so that they see the difference, because sometimes the answer is no, and they think it's because of special school district, and it's really based on the rules and regulations. State plan, those have come through. You guys have signed our governance documents and all those different aspects as we come through. Kate is great at getting those in, the local compliance plan. There are parts within the state plan and the standards and indicators that just apply to special school districts. There's us, and then there's also one in Penobscot County in southeast Missouri. So there's two in the state, so they have their own few little extra steps that we do, and that's around a lot of the joint reviews, so that we have a component district and partner district representation. And then you guys approve this, and special school districts, boards approve it. State requirements, the general insurance document, we did that last month, and I've already turned that in. And then here is kind of a broader picture of what I just explained. So you've got the big federal down to the state, and then district policies and procedures. Any questions? Partnership agreement. This was an increased effort a few years ago to go through and really have intentional conversations around roles and responsibilities to kind of break down some of the barriers between the two systems. This document is a really good tool. We do it at the partnership agreement is done at the broader central office level, and then you'll see that we talk about the principal coordinator tool, and so we do that as well. So it really helps to define those. I just came back from a state conference, and it's always interesting to me, these same conversations happen across the state, not just within St. Louis County, but we actually have the documents to kind of help everybody tease it out between general education and special education. The 7 categories are here. The staffing, teaching and learning, collaboration, student services, data and technology, transportation, and career tech ed. And there's the agreement down there. And then I want to go to where we are on this. So this is what everybody agrees to. And this is the vision and mission that we talk about for each of the districts in that. Piece. Oh, I thought people were reading.
I was.
I thought so. I was trying to read body language in here.
I'm really fast.
Perfect. And so these are everybody who signs it. So the superintendents of both the board presidents and our governing council member. This is where we were last year. So this is the survey that at the start of this year. So it was taken from where we ended last year. So before Dr. Triphammer retired, we went to these. The career tech educational one doesn't, I think this was sent in to us, and you can see that it's got like a negative piece, and it wasn't. So what that is there's some NAs on that list, just because they don't necessarily apply to us. We have a real, and you'll see later in the presentation, pretty good representation even within our career tech ed. So that has been an area of focus that Dr. Triphammer and I really focused in on to make sure that we were aligning to some of those different aspects. And so we have more, because when we first started, there were 0 that we were able to check. So in a very short period of time, we did that. Transportation, again, that one's a little bit different here because we don't have transportation outside of the students who require it as a related service. And then staffing and then the teaching and learning, we do quite a bit of partnerships for professional development between the 2 districts and tap into those resources.
So with some of them being NA under category 7, where should we be, where do we want to be, what's our goal?
Our goal is to address them all. And they're all worth 4 points, so it's like 8 questions total. And so when we look at that, it is really bringing in some of those discussions, and it's that deeper dive, and it is continuing to work with Emily Diaz and then Dr. Johnson at the high school. And so more and more of what's happening is the graduation plans and their plans of study, and then also our transition plans for students with IEPs that are required in the IEPs. We've started to bring those more connected. So special education students have always had a part, and the school district has worked with them, but it's been more intentional to incorporate some of those services that are addressed through what Emily does with every student, and in recording those into the IEP and Part C, or the transition plan, which is required for a student when they turn age 16 through the time they graduate. We start talking about transition much earlier, but that's when it's required by the state.
Do we ever talk about keeping some of those children a year longer?
Mhm.
Just,
We do,
not SSD per se, but I know that changes from years to years and generations to generations of keeping kids back. So I was just curious.
so not necessarily retention. So anytime a student is retained, that is a general education decision. However, we have students who will stay in program until age 21. So if it's a student that is going to access more of our post-secondary, like that's that next step in their training. So if you've ever been in on one of our Friday mornings, have the coffee shop, that was part of what we built in to help build some of those skills, so that we had students who may be more ready to go straight into a workforce or a different type of supported living or independent living post-high school, but then we also have a few a year, it really depends on the year, who will tap into VSP, which is after they graduate and they can stay till age 21. If a family does that, or if it's really an IEP team decision. So when an IEP team decides that, then the student would still walk at graduation. They just don't get handed their diploma. So in the terms of the student, yes, they've graduated, we celebrate, they do all of that. They will then continue and go into more of a work-related type of position, and so we have a different department that they work with. They come to our IEP meetings, we start that somewhere between their sophomore and senior year. Really, it is student-dependent and family-dependent, where the family is on that decision, and because it's never too late to change their minds, until we issue the notice of action. So every student who graduates, we give them a prior written notice that they're no longer eligible for services, because once you graduate from high school, you no longer are IDEA eligible. So if you go to college or university and you need those supports, it's under a different law, which is federal law, it's the 504 law.
And there's a where do those students go if they're going to do more vocational training?
That is also dependent on each student. So we work within our transitions department, and some one of our biggest celebrations is a student who worked in the library here in town, and so then we went back and then they graduated from there. Some we we connect with vocational rehabilitation, and they may go into assisted job sites. And so it really is that level of independence and that student and family goal. We really look at post-secondary training, their independent living, and then their vocational, how they're going to be able, and if they're going to go to employment. And so one of the things that we've started to really talk about, even when students transition from early child to school age, is really starting to talk to parents about understanding some of the choices we make when they're 5 and 6 can have that long-term effect. So what does that look like? And really talking about what a disability is and and supporting families, and then being very intentional about connecting them with FACES, which is our family and community engagement that we have within special school district, so that we can remove some of those, the confusion around it. I'm going to be honest, it's quite overwhelming, and there's a lot of pieces and moving parts to it, so we do what we can to support families along that way. And what you're thinking about when they're 5 versus 18, just like with any child, is quite different. So trying to meet them where they are in each of those.
That's great. Yeah, I think that's amazing, those partnerships that you have.
So then we also do the principal and coordinator collaboration tool. This is the first year we're doing them here with a lot of the turnovers we've had the last couple of years with a lot of the just various administrative levels. We've utilized the principles of these, but we're sitting down and looking at the numbers so that we can see that. So we have our pre-assessments, and then we'll have them again at the end of the school year. So the purpose of this tool is to really sit down and all look at the same questions at the same time and see what it is that, and how we support one another. So we use these county-wide. So for us here in Brentwood, they're lucky, you're all lucky, that you have me, then I serve in a coordinator role and a director role. So in the larger districts, you may have 10 coordinators and 1 director. And so each coordinator may work with 4 or 5 different buildings. So here in this, we're called the Smalls, I'm one of 6 in the county, we do both roles. So really that's a good thing, and it's sometimes confusing, and one of the things we're working on right now is really helping everybody understand when I'm in a meeting or I'm on a committee as a coordinator versus a director, because those roles are different. The best way I can describe it is often when I'm working with a principal and I'm in a coordinator role, I think of myself as more like an assistant principal, because it's the building principal's building, and then I help try to get to their vision and mission for their building while ensuring that we're maintaining all of the rules and regulations and upholding the moral and ethical reasons around special education. Where from a central office vision and being on that, then it's more from that cabinet level role where I'm supporting the vision and mission of the superintendent, the board, and the community. And those theory, just like a building principal's role, will very different from an assistant supes. And so you're looking at those different aspects. So that's what this is. And I would say that's probably our biggest thing that we're doing right now, is really digging into that, because part of what's happened over the last few years is really a broader understanding for the community as a whole of educators, teachers, special education, general education, and administration across the board on the roles that each of us play within supporting the entire child. And it's not so much, oh, well, they go here, we go here. No, but we're all intertwined, and when you bring everybody together, it can sometimes get messy. So we're in that process of doing the good, hard, fun work. So this is the purpose of them. So then they identified action steps, and I did talk about this on the back one. With the central office one, from that partnership agreement, it is continuing with some of the things we've done. I'm on cabinet. Not every district in St. Louis County does that. That is something that actually after we presented at the Principals Institute, it started happening more and more that the director was a member of the cabinet. I will say that it is something that I took for granted, I guess, but the openness and welcoming here in Brentwood for that, and really sometimes forgetting that there are two districts is a good thing, but that is the reality of being in the county. So then the identified action steps here is each building leadership team completed the tool. Then we've established regular building-specific meetings with each principal to discuss building and student and programmatic need. And in addition to that, then we are meeting at that more global level with the secondary meeting that Dr. Zielinski has put into place for as a district where the secondary administration and the elementary administration are meeting on a regular basis. And so I participate in both of those. But then in addition to that, then I meet with each building principal on a regular basis to talk about their specific need. And then this is one of the bigger changes is we've established department heads with clearer roles and responsibilities to streamline communication and day-to-day operations. So I can't be in every building every day, and the department heads in each of those buildings, that's what they're serving in that role. And they're not administrative in any way, but that makes sure that there's somebody in the building on a regular and consistent basis, like daily, that may be able to answer a question that the principal may have if I'm supporting another building. That's been very intentional, and we're utilizing the same method and job descriptions and things like Brentwood does for their grade level or department heads at the secondary level. Important dates. We've met most of these. We'll get the collaboration tool in by June 30th, and then those will be up, and then you'll see those comparisons. The partnership agreement is in, and then the general assurance document. So this is where I waited to get these, because these are hot off the presses, these numbers.
You just got them today.
Yes, we were actually the first ones, because I was like, hey, we love these, can we please get them before I present? So I was really kind of glad the meeting got moved. And then I asked that, and then I put our 24-25 numbers up, and then our 23-24, because I anticipated there was going to be some questions on changes. So we brought those in from last year. So you can see that our enrollment and our number of students with IEPs has gone up. One of the next slides I feel like is more. Yes. I feel like I need a podium so I don't walk up and everybody. I'm like, yes.
When dividing 157 by 706, it doesn't, am I doing my math wrong to get to the 14.3?
No, I don't have a calculator in front of me.
Closer to 22%.
This is who live in the Brentwood School District, so my wondering is, does this include SNAP students who attend private school but receive
So
services?
we have 12 students who receive non-public student access through SNAP.
Okay, that's how it's.
And then 6 students attend special school district schools. So the 129 are in, so, okay. Does that math?
18.2.
I wonder if it's.
You don't know either?
We can look into it.
We'll look into it. When I saw the 14, I thought it was higher. I thought we were closer to 18, closer to 20, but again,
Yeah, I want to check into the numbers
Yeah.
too, because this
The
enrollment
706
number is
is-
actually from that's the number I looked up that was last year, and my basic calculations, we've not had the enrollment date, like Ronnie, you may remember, when's the DESI count date?
Is this month?
And I think it's Friday, I mean, it's usually this,
Yeah.
around now.
I don't know the
So I'm
exact
just,
date, but
I'm curious about our total enrollment, because I actually think our numbers are higher this year than last year. So
So
that makes me nervous, because our elementary in particular are bursting at the seams right now. So I'm actually quite proud that our numbers are higher, so that 706 is another one that I'd want to look into where that came from, because that I thought was what Desi reported last year.
So that is probably what that's from.
Okay.
So another fun challenge in a dual system is how current all the data is at any given time.
Yeah.
So that is a genuine piece of it. So that is probably based off of what was reported to DESI last year, because that was what our child count number was. So when we do our December 1st child count, the 129 would be accurate for what we have now, based on transfers in, because they can pull that instantly based on what's active in our IEP program. Does that make sense? But that number for Brentwood, because it's not updated live anywhere that would be available to an external source, would be there. So we will then, and then for us here in Brentwood, because we are so small, that can be the difference of a few
A couple
percentage
kids.
points. So we will get that clarified, and I will get that back to you as well.
Just so you know, Katie, is that I'll get you the enrollment numbers once we have them. DESI picks one date a year, that is what we report as the enrollment date. Those are our numbers, so that otherwise, every day, given day, kids come in, kids move, that kind of thing. So that number is only accurate for, to be honest, that day. But it gives us a better number. But I'll get you guys the enrollment numbers of my.
So we can put in the Brentwood spotlight.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, exactly. Well,
We'll get it for you.
I was really excited about the number, so that's why I see that 706. I was like, no, it's big, it's higher, it's more than that.
So SSD services, we provide a wide range. So the homebound, and I believe, is that on the agenda this month too, or did we already do that one? The homebound.
We already did it. We
already did that one. To where the homebound instruction comes. So that is non-disabled students or students without IEPs is what you guys sign the assurance document for every year. And then this one is for students who are also able to without IEPs. So we do it for students with IEPs and without. SNAP. So if you are a taxpayer in St. Louis County and you live here, and you have a student who attends a private school or homeschool, then you can also access special education. And then we do have some students who are dually enrolled, so they still come to campus just for special education services and attend their private school.
How about, are we able to do hearing impaired and blind as well? I know years ago we did, and then there were some time frames that we didn't have the services that were necessary, so.
So when we have a student who would qualify in one of those areas, it is a team decision. We may bring in and look at different opportunities around the county. So just like if we were considering like an SSD school for a change of placement there, then we may assign them and access in a different part of the county. And sometimes that is to allow them to be around peers that are similar, because then they have a community with a similar disability, and blind, deaf, hard of hearing are two that sometimes that is common with, because of the connections that they make to the internal community as well.
Just kind of curious of the homebound instructions and SNAP. Are those students able to participate in some of our extracurricular and other programs as well? Or is it just for providing educational services?
Homebound is really just oftentimes for medical, or we may have a student who may not have an IEP that is accessing it because of a treatment for a severe medical illness, but they may still also then be able to access other things at the school because it would still be enrolled in Brentwood. In terms of SNAP, that depends on the board policy. So we have some kids who just come in for band or music or German at the high school, but that would not be related to the SNAP program. But it's the same reason that the kids can come in. It's the same rules that govern that. And then we do have the Juvenile Detention Center school. That's one of the schools that we have within the county as well. And then we do have ECSE here that is provided by Special School District. That is different than school age. They're different parts of the law. And so here, early childhood is a part of Special School District. Anything else? South Tech? this is where we have students going. We have really good representation at Sept, and they do very well. Our students do. With Emily, Ms. Diaz is a wonderful resource and support. These, I will say these are, I did look at these more closely because I see these more often. So these are disability areas, and if you've heard me over the last couple of years talking about the change in our dynamic and the number of kids in that percentage. So if you look at autism, emotional disturbance, intellectual disability, language impairment, and other health impairment, those 5 are ones that tend to be more global disabilities and impact a student across all areas of their day.
Will you say them again now that you've contextualized them?
Autism, emotional disturbance,
Okay.
intellectual disability, language impairment, and other health impairment.
What are examples of other health impairment?
Great question. Many of our students who are here with another health impairment have a medical diagnosis of ADHD. And that would be an impact with their executive functioning. And so that is where you see that more globally. And so a lot of our students who are identified with autism or other health impairment or language impairment are in the general education classrooms over 80% of the time. So in the past, when a lot of people think about special education, they think of, oh, I'm going to go down to a room and get extra help for reading or math. So a lot of those students would fall into the specific learning disability, but that has typically reduced. It's gone up a little bit the last couple of years, but with the introduction of the interventionist, we've had fewer and fewer, and a lot of those have transferred into us as well over the last couple of years. And the idea behind that is with the intervention, you're meeting the student need before it's a disability. And so then they get what they need and they aren't pulled out. The others are, yes, they may be more lifelong conditions, at least in an educational format, but they are able to access their curriculum in a classroom.
And what is an example of other?
So to be another health impairment, then it has to have a medical diagnosis outside of school personnel, and then it has to impact the child's ability to access the curriculum. So you may have a student.
I was talking
about
Other,
the green-
just the general other that you.
Oh, other, sorry. Other might be traumatic brain injury, blind, deaf, hard of hearing. We don't have enough to.
Thank you.
And I'm sure anxiety is somewhere in this.
Anxiety typically falls, if they receive an IEP for it, typically is under emotional disturbance, sometimes other health impairment. But there are many students who have a medical diagnosis of anxiety or ADHD or depression that may not need an IEP because they don't require specialized instruction. They may just require accommodations.
And then they would maybe qualify for a 504. So you'd see many of our students with anxiety would qualify perhaps under a 504 instead of an IEP.
And so they would not be reflected on these numbers.
Yeah, that would be,
Okay.
that's not part of the special school district.
I did not know that. I learned something tonight.
Something you never do, every time we present.
Definitions. So there's a definition of all of the, other is for students in the process of receiving services, being screened for services, or within an active IEP. I took it as I apologize. Questions?
So SSD screens for each one of these, can a student have a physician diagnosis brought in, or does SSD have to verify it, or?
So, very good question. If a student or family brings in a medical diagnosis and says, because often we will get a prescription from a doctor that says the student needs an IEP or evaluated for an IEP. So part of that process is to say, and we look at the big picture and say, okay, does this make sense? Like, do we suspect a disability? And that's part of our child find obligation. And within that, then that's where that joint review comes in, where we look at all the information. Then we would take and do different assessments based on areas of concern that the IEP team, even if they don't have an IEP, when we do the evaluation, it's still considered an IEP team. So that'd be the classroom, at least one classroom teacher, a special education teacher, even though they do not work with them yet, the counselor, the parent, sometimes a principal and the school psychologist. And then we do the battery of tests in different areas, if it's rating scales, IQ test, achievement test, verified medical, all of those different aspects. Then we bring all of that together and review it and determine if the student meets any of the criteria for one of the 13 disabilities. And then if they do, then we say, okay, do they require specialized instruction? And if the answer is yes, then we move forward and develop an IEP. If the answer is no, then we would say, okay, then they don't qualify to be a student with an IEP.
Okay, thanks.
I don't even know if this is the right time to ask this, but just something I was thinking of. Were extracurricular activities in this agreement? Is there something we see down the road where there'll be sports and there'll be drama and there'll be music and all that, that the SSD school district's looking into to add to this? Because I just think it would be great. I mean, I know parents can put their kids in all these different organizations that do great jobs with extracurricular activities, but is it something down the road we might see that's part of these partnership agreements, not just the educational aspect, but the extracurricular, which I think is important for every child, everywhere?
So it is actually in every IEP. So the IEP team evaluates that question every time, and every student with an IEP has access to participate in the extracurricular activities. If they need support to access that, then that's another conversation on, okay, what does that support look like? And then some places it might be that we need to provide some extra training for the basketball coach or the track coach on what that looks like. It may be an accommodation of, we have a student who needs headphones to be able to go to the track meet because of all of the starter pistols. And so there's different things like that we would consider and look at the environment and say, what do you need to access this? Active in Special Olympics. So that is something that is sponsored countywide. We're pretty active. We're trying to get our elementary within that, but we travel and partner with Ladue and Clayton because that's also who we do our job sites with at high school. Anything else?
Great presentation.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
We actually need to approve the partnership.
Oh, we need to approve it, sorry.
The agreement, yes.
I move that we approve the partnership agreement. Second.
Discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that agreement's approved.
Thank you.
Now we're going to call Dr. Zakora up here. She's got multiple presentations for us tonight. The first is the summary of
May I
the-
sit? I
Yeah.
have notes and I'd like to take notes, so, and I may be up here for now, hopefully not.
Yeah.
It's getting to
It's
be a
already
long one.
questioned. First one is the summer learning presentation. It's summarized. Dr. Grammer on putting this information together.
Okay. Yeah, oh, wow, this is quite an array of clickers. Let's put this over here. All right. Good evening, thank you. I have 4 things that I get to share with you all this evening. So to start with, we've got our summer learning update from this previous summer. Starting with elementary, so Dr. Grammer was our elementary summer school coordinator for the year, and so she shared a lot of the wonderful successes that they had 156 elementary students participate in their summer program. And 10 of those students were enrolled in the Jump Start program to give them a little bit of a leg up, and they combined and this is my understanding, mind you, I wasn't present for this yet, but I did talk to Dr. Grammer about what the program looked like, that they took some previously separate programs and combined them into one this year. And so there you can see what each grade level included as part of their STEAM camp, their Camp Learn this summer. And so this included our students who were eligible for additional reading support, invited for reading support this summer, that they received that reading support as part of the generalized programming for all of our students that were there. Our reading specialists provided interventions. And so they themed out their summer programming with land, sea, and space themes. Each week had a different theme. They did invite families in for a demonstration day. And so on the whole, they felt like it was a really successful program. I would just say, based on my experience with summer school, generally the enrollment number to me is astonishing that we had 156 students that were excited to be here for 3 weeks in the summer. And I can see why, because it seems like it was really fun and engaging and really great opportunity for those students. So next year, the suggestions, they did a lot of hands-on, crafty kinds of activities. So making sure that we've got a budget to supply all the things that they need for that. And then also, summer school positions can sometimes be hard to fill because our teachers work really hard all year long. And so for them to be able to commit to several weeks in the summer is sometimes challenging. So making sure we get those positions. And I would say this is true for elementary through high school. If we need to staff summer school, that we're posting those early enough that we get high quality staffing and, to the extent possible can secure our great Brentwood teachers who are willing and able to do that.
So just real quick.
Yes.
I'm curious, and I don't recall, do we charge for the summer?
No, we have not.
Okay. And I can certainly understand, the budget and the resource, that might be something that we want to consider maybe potentially next year, or figuring that into our budget. Great.
Adding money for the summer school program.
Adding money for it, and then trying to find a way to offset some of that cost for the district, potentially.
Do you know, there were some on the waiting list, were we able to get everybody in?
I don't know, that's a great question. I can find that out.
We were, I think we were down to like 6 or 8 or whatever, and we were like, is there any way, if we needed to add another teacher, let's do that, because we didn't really want to leave anybody out. Plus, we wanted to make sure first we were focusing on the ones who were pinpointed to go to this,
Right.
and then,
Nobody was
Yeah,
on
we hired a teacher literally the day before, and we got every single kid off the wait list. Anybody who wanted to participate was able to.
Thank you, Angela.
Just because I don't know when else there would be an opportunity to speak directly to this. There have been conversations in the past with Dr. Regent when she was running the summer program about potentially pushing the start time back, because another very well participated in community activity is summer swim team. And I do understand that is not public, but it is our community. And they did adjust their times to start earlier in hopes to accommodate more people, because they're told you can't be late, you can't do both. So some families were forgoing, where other families were just disregarding and showing up when they wanted to the summer school.
So when you say the start date, you mean the time of day, not the
Start
start at a
time
date? Okay.
of the day.
Okay.
Yes. I know that it runs into lunch, but the consequences that some kids have to get up earlier in the summer than even during the school year, which is hard because the daylight is longer and there's less sleep all around. And if some sort of collaboration or conversation be had, I think that would be very beneficial.
what are the hours right now?
Currently, the first practice, they shifted up to 7:45, but that's really hard for little kids to get up and then be in the cold water. The water's really cold at that time.
And when
as
does
well.
our summer school start?
I think it started at 9.
9.
So the kids that did swim team, they'd show up, mine were, and that's part of that. And they would show up like 10 or so. They accommodate the business hour or so. It was raised earlier, there was awareness of it, it's just, it's a
We-
challenge and push it.
Yeah,
It's
we
hard to
pushed
push
it
it back
back
staff-wise.
1 hour this year to
Was it?
see if we could try to accommodate the swim team better.
Yeah.
So this year we started 1 hour later than we did prior years.
At 9, you started at 9?
I think it was actually 8:30.
8:30.
this year.
Okay.
Yeah, and in prior years it was 8, and
Yes.
so I think it's definitely like a discussion for next year, like, did it work, does it need to go back further?
I think that'll be one that we'll want to do some surveying to families, because I don't want to solve one problem and create another.
Right.
Right,
And I
other
think the
families
other,
maybe,
yeah,
how do you
No,
know
maybe
that?
we do like a 0 hour, like
Yeah.
we used to do in high school, like a 0 hour, everybody comes, because it is really not fair for the ones who follow the policy and procedure, and then the other ones that just come in late.
And I think we also have
Timing
to,
of
from
the
a
year.
cost perspective, also consider if we do go into lunch, that adds a whole nother layer.
Mm.
So I just think that's something good to know for us to discuss and think of what can we do, but
And the time of the year could make a difference too, the swim team goes to what, in July?
one of the things to consider there too, and that's why I think a survey or some kind of input from our families would be important. Ledoux used to do July summer school, and that became really difficult to staff. So it just, I think these are all layers to consider,
Yeah.
so
Or
good
what
points to bring up.
Sure.
One additional thought would be we've heard staff put an afternoon option instead of, for parents requiring summer school as childcare. It's only part of the day, and could that part of the day perhaps be in the afternoon instead of morning?
What I've seen happen in those kind of situations is where you pay for part, like, so to Ryan's point, there's some
Yeah.
universal, and then
Yeah.
if you want extra, but that looks different, so
Yeah.
those are some things we can look into, and those are
Yeah.
also bigger lifts for making sure it's meaningful content for kids.
There are 125 swimmers, and nearly all of them are from Brentwood, and I would say probably 100 are elementary. Yeah.
Okay.
Good to know.
Well, yeah, that is good to know. That's very helpful context. And, summer school planning will start much sooner than
That's
so
very
before we
important.
know it,
It's around the
yeah,
corner.
it's right around the corner. So, so thanks. I do think we can get some community input on that as well. Middle school summer program this previous summer was a 3-week opportunity. They served 23 students, 2 teachers. They put together 4 courses. It was a very experiential type of program, and so the topics are there. I should say mental health and self-care. I think I corrected that on mine, but didn't make the transition. And so these themed courses, some of them included field trips. For example, the color and design group went to the Missouri History Museum to learn about St. Louis architecture. The mental health group had a guest speaker from NIMS that came and talked to them. Culinary arts, they used the foods labs, and they learned some recipes. They also learned meal planning and how to put together some healthy meals for their families, including like how to budget for those meals, and selected the ingredients and then were able to prepare them. Water quality, got outside, did some water testing, spent a lot of time in the park. So really exploratory experiences for our middle schoolers, but then also were trying to target students who they felt really needed some summer support, and were able to integrate some of that academic support into the courses. And so they liked that model. It seemed to work well for them, and I think they would like to continue to do those kind of thematic courses at the middle school level.
Do you know about, there were 3 middle schoolers that went to something different than this, that was some sort of summit, and I had no idea that it existed or how to. Yes, and it required referrals from teachers, but how could we promote that also?
Okay, I don't know what that is, but I can find out. It was at Truman?
Yes, I believe so.
I don't know, I just remember thinking,
Wasn't Joseph
that's
Baldwin
amazing,
Academy,
I wish
was
I
it?
had known.
Joseph Baldwin Academy. I know
Yes.
that's- Is that
Yes,
it?
that's
Okay.
what it is.
Okay,
Yep.
yeah. I'm familiar with what that is.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's kind of a competitive process to apply
Yes.
and get
Invited,
into
I
that.
think, to
Mhm.
participate, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like a mini college experience.
Mhm.
So was nomination a part of that?
I'm only familiar with it from my own children's school, so I actually don't know how it went down here. I did not have a child attend, but I did learn a little bit about it. So I believe you have to be nominated by a staff member, and then the school can write recommendations for the student, and then they choose, they basically choose like an area of interest for a 3-week course at Truman. Yeah.
But it's not, I don't believe it's very cheap though, either.
It is not.
Oh, yeah.
It does, yeah.
I don't know any information. To me, it seemed like an offering that wasn't communicated, and it seems like I have a knowledge deficit.
Yeah, okay.
On the courses, so could we survey the students from middle school who probably, because of their age, started at least 1 year in the elementary summer school, and just kind of see how they thought it compared? Because I would love to see the numbers. I looked at this first and I was like, well, how do we, and this was stupid of me to think this, but where is the math, where is the science, blah, 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 blah. I'm the old school math science, but I know you can learn so much of this by cooking and all. I do with my kids all the time. But it would be interesting to see if we can continue that growth and continue that interest, and make sure that we're doing this as much excitement in the elementary school, having it flow into the middle school kind of thing.
I will say this type of drop-off is very common
Right.
for middle schoolers.
Yeah.
But I do think asking their opinion of what would be, and also what are the courses that they're interested in.
Yeah,
I love
especially
the
at this.
experiential
level.
nature of it is amazing.
Because we find a lot of families who are transitioning their kids to being alone
Yeah.
in that first year.
Mhm.
And it could still be a great, so. I was just-
Absolutely.
Do we have events at the middle school level to help promote our summer activities, I remember there was an event for elementary schools to promote what summer options are out there. And I thought that was pretty well attended. Was there something similar that might have raised awareness of things like what we recently mentioned?
I'm not, those kind of camp, like the,
Camp fair kind of.
yeah, fairs, like summer activities fairs to let parents know what's out there. I've not seen them stretch to the middle school, but that's something we can look into as well, is to include offerings, because it is that awkward time.
Programs, but
Yeah.
it can help us raise awareness of it.
I think it's a good community connection too, what else is out there in the community, because kids at that age, it's a different need, or different interests too.
Another question I had just about middle school too is I think with the elementary school, we invited students, like students that we thought would really benefit from the summer school, they were personally invited, and wondering if we do that at the middle school level too, and that might look different.
Right. So I don't know whether they were personally encouraged to attend. I do know that they did embed, like I said, some of those lagging skills into these courses to try to, prevent that summer slide and keep kids learning. But I will find out.
And maybe that's not effective, but just kind of an idea
Well,
to see how we
right.
can reach as many families that might benefit from this.
Yeah. I think these are all good questions, and I think as we start to plan for next year too, it'll be important to clarify, like, what are our intentions and our outcomes for summer school? Do we want to just provide some fun, enriching, engaging experiences for students? Do we want to, my understanding is middle school previously, and I don't know how long ago this was, but that they used to have like a very targeted remediation program, but it was not very well attended. They had a hard time getting students to commit. So I love the idea of embedding that with these more exploratory, enriching experiences. But I think that's something that I'll need to learn when I talk to our staff is what do we want to, what are our goals for summer school? And what would be kind of a ballpark of an ideal number of enrollment to where we are staffing it and we're having the students attend that kind of evens out our resources and the outcomes for that. So
I think that's an important piece. It's hard to be all things for all people.
Sure. Yeah.
And so trying to figure out what is our path so that we can clearly communicate that as to what this purpose is. And then tagging that into that if this is not the purpose for you, also what are other opportunities for families out there that maybe this doesn't fit because it's only 3 hours in the morning or whatever that may be, or kids' interests. I don't want to go back to school during the summer.
Yeah.
That's
my son.
It's
I'm not going to school.
I'm a middle schooler and a half.
got a hard no from my own kid about that. I was like, it's
Be
and it's free, rents are going, no, okay.
And then I guess this might be a question for Trevina. Where does the special school district play a role in this? There were times where we heard from parents that really, especially at the high school level, the virtual wasn't a good fit for our special school district students. Do we have the staff from K all the way up so that we're also reaching out to the special school district and, I don't know how to say it, but our students, every student, every whatever, across the board being serviced in these programs?
So for extended school, so there's sometimes some confusion. So extended school year is something that a student may qualify for because of their disability through their IEP. So the special school district does run our extended school year at the same time as Brentwood Summer School. The last 3 years now, since the summer of '21, special school district has worked with partner districts to supply staffing for partner district summer programming. And so we have staffed and we just work with whatever the partner district summer program is. At the elementary, we typically have 1 teacher and then 3 to 5 paras who are supporting grades K through 5. So they don't get the same services because summer, you don't get FAPE, which is a free and appropriate public education, you're not entitled to that. That's an extra time. So it is able to work in and support alongside. So it looks different where the extended school year part is part of the IEP. This last year, so we've always had somebody at middle school as well for those programs. We do have somebody available to support at high school, but again, it is the program that is being offered to any student, and so a lot do not participate because it is virtual.
we look into, I know a couple years ago, we had looked into Melville and different districts, and we voted that down to join into other district ventures.
To do their summer school, to
Mhm.
let our kids go to their summer
Mhm.
program.
Is that something that we should be revisiting? Do you see the need there? Do we see numbers? I'm just wondering, all this kind of came about, we've been very successful with the elementary and the STEM, and it's taken off, and so I'm just curious, I don't know, it may not be something, but.
Was that a conversation at the high school level you mean for having students attend elsewhere, or is that,
Mhm,
okay,
mhm.
okay.
We can look into it. I would want to know numbers and need and interest and
Mhm.
the challenges that come from students that, we've talked even, ours are pretty, it's original credit for like health and getting credit ahead of credits at the high school level, or replacing
That was
credits you
my
have been
question.
successful, so it's, it's so different at the high school. I would want to make sure that
Right.
we're meeting a need that exists
Mhm.
Right.
versus
And we
trying to
may
find a
not.
solution.
That
And
may
it
have been a
or
couple
not.
years ago, and
But
it
it's
may
worth-
not, yeah.
It's definitely worth finding out and digging into for sure.
And there are some programs that are available to students to apply for to work in the summer. So we do have some different programs within the special school district for that as well. So we have students who, there really are quite a few options. It's really a matter of signing up and getting into them. And then many, many students go to camps throughout the summer, which are not part of special school district, but they are designed for students with special needs.
Katie, you had a question?
I did, I see that at the at the middle school level, it's experiential learning and it's part social with embedded curriculum and teaching. And then at the high school level, it's virtual. What classes you were saying they're just get ahead classes, help, they're just
Yeah.
trying to knock things out?
Yeah, so the high school, it really is a whole different animal when it comes to summer school because the objective is to acquire your credits toward your diploma. And so for a lot of students, so in this case, this summer, 45 of our students were knocking out some of those credits that they could take during the typical school year, but a lot of our students want to try to, fit as much variety into their schedule as they can, so things like their health, their PE, their personal finance. That's what we would call original credits. Their first time taking it, they're getting that credit out of the way in the summer. And then 13 of our students were taking credit recovery, which means they attempted that course during the school year. They did not pass that course, and so now they're taking it in summer to recover those credits. All of this is online. There was a teacher present for the month of June. The students who are taking credit recovery, even though it's an online course, they have to come to Brentwood High School and take that with the teacher there to support them. Now, mind you, it's 13 students probably taking 13 different courses, so there's no guarantee that they'll get a level of individualized instruction through the curriculum of that whole course, but there is a teacher present to help them troubleshoot and keep them on task and ensure that they're reaching the end and they're recovering that credit. It's tricky with high school as well because the way that the state counts our attendance or has attendance requirements is different for high school than it is for elementary and middle. And so if we were to have in-person high school courses, it does require that our students be present in person for a significant number of hours. And if they're absent even just a few days, then we lose entirely any reclamation of that time or that credit. And so going a virtual option is just, it's more flexible for our students and our families that they don't have to be present every day for, say, 5 or 6 weeks at a time. So it's not always ideal for students who have struggled to learn the curriculum the first time around. This is not a problem that is unique to Brentwood. This is every district right now that is trying to figure out, really in this post-COVID world, summer school generally has just fallen off. But it is difficult to figure out the best way for especially those credit recovery courses. I do think 67 out of 68 courses passed is a really great, successful proportion, and so that's wonderful. And then because these courses are all taken through launch, there's Springfield Public Schools. Springfield is actually claiming that those students' attendance, and in exchange, we don't pay their tuition for those launch courses. Because Springfield can submit those hours for their own reimbursement, and so our students can take those at no cost to Brentwood.
That's great.
Yes.
Like that.
It is a very economical way for us, especially a district that gets very little ADA from the state.
Any summer school questions?
This is not an action item. an information item. We decided to make, apparently we're having themed board meetings.
Yes. So
As
the
far as
next couple,
facilities, this is all curriculum instruction.
these next couple of topics I think typically would not be part of the September board meeting, but these were documents that were created in the spring, but also not brought to the board because they wanted our new administration to have an opportunity to review them with the teacher groups that created them. So our assessment plan for the 24-25 school year is already underway. There are no major changes from last year. Our state required assessments remain the same. And so that's just a list there of all the things that the state requires us to do. I will talk at the end of this quick section about changes we're looking to for next year because the state has limited what assessment we can use as our reading fundamentals screener or assessment for our students in kindergarten through 3rd grade. And so we'll be putting together a group to take a look at that. So state required assessments, no change there. Our district assessments, also no changes here from last year. So these are all tools that we were using previously that we continue to use this year. I will say I love our high school and post-secondary list. I feel like that's such a great list of options and sometimes optional, but sometimes also required for our students to prepare them for that post-secondary planning. And so I know Brentwood has done a lot with those ICAPs and developing those plans for students and aligning the right assessment to the right plan, which I think is really great. So our next steps in planning for next year is that we've put together an assessment task force that's about 25-ish staff members that are going to take a look at our whole assessment plan, K through 12. Early childhood is very comfortable and confident with what they're using for their screening, so this will be a K-12 look. The primary purpose is that we do have to select a new reading assessment for kindergarten through 3rd grade. So DESE has 3 approved assessments that are on that list. None of them are what we are currently using, and so we are going to take a look at 2 of them. One of them we've kind of already taken off the table. We're going to take a closer look at 2 that are very widely used across the state of Missouri and bring those vendors in for a demo and then give our assessment committee time to ask questions and review and go back to their buildings and get feedback. And so as we are doing that, we're taking that as an opportunity to look K through 12 at our whole assessment scope to make sure that what we are currently using as our assessment tools are the most productive, the most efficient, also that they align well with what our philosophy and our policies are on assessment in this district. So making sure that we aren't over-assessing our kids, making sure that the assessment tools that we use are giving us meaningful, actionable data that our teachers can use to inform instruction. I mean, really, our assessment plan should serve 2 main purposes. One should be it informs our instruction. So every time we're giving a student an assessment, that is giving us helpful feedback to plan for that student's learning. But then also that our assessment plan should give us a big picture snapshot of how well our curriculum is aligned. That if we are teaching our curriculum with fidelity, then we should see that show up in our assessment scores. So that's why we're going to take an opportunity to look big picture at everything. I don't anticipate that there's going to be like a major overhaul of our assessment plan. I think we've got a good solid plan, but I also think that it's a time to revisit how we're using that data in the classroom, at the building level, at the district level, and make sure that the data that we are getting from that is the data that we need. So that will take place over the course of this fall semester so that by winter, really by the start of 2nd semester, we have an idea of which of those 2 K-3 reading assessments we'll be using, and then we can take 2nd semester to start to onboard our teachers, train our staff, make sure that our systems are prepared. It's always a big technology question as well to make sure that everything is integrating the way that we need to, and so we want to have all of that ready to go so that day 1 of the new school year next year, we feel confident and ready with what we're using. And then we also will be reviewing our use of the SABRS social emotional learning screener that was introduced last year. So our SEL committee, the new district staff committee that we're putting together to help support our strategic plan, we are going to be learning more about the SABRS tool and how to really break down the data that we get from that to figure out how we can use that to support students, to provide interventions. It may be that, for example, there's a tier 1 kind of a building-based identifiable strategy that we can use. Let's say that our SABRS screener tells us our students are scoring lower in learning strategies. They get stuck with their learning, they're not sure what to do. Well, that tells us then as a district, this is something that we can incorporate into our classroom and we can provide PD to our teachers Or it may also be that the Sabres occasionally is going to flag those students that we didn't realize they needed additional support. We didn't realize that there were social emotional learning struggles, and so it helps us to know when we can identify those students, meet with them, better understand what's going on. So the Sabres was given last fall and spring. We are giving it again this year, fall and spring, but we're going to be very intentional with what happens next once we get that data. I think last year was a rollout, a pilot of let's give the assessment and just kind of see how it feels, and so now this year we want to make sure that the results from that assessment are being used as purposefully as they can.
And this is in action.
So,
Yes.
so will you anticipate reporting to us what changes you're making to the assessment plan sometime in the spring, or after you work through this?
Yes, yeah.
And will there be a report on, I remember us implementing the Sabre stuff, some kind of report of what kind of information that you're getting, and I don't really understand what it's doing, and maybe there's something that, some report on kind of things that it's showing trends and things like that, or anything, or what's?
Yeah, so you will get all of that. I think we'll package that nicely for you to understand what Sabres is showing to us, and then also what kind of growth we're seeing fall to spring. So ideally, we would be giving that fall screener. We'd identify some areas that we want to grow, whether it's at the building level, at the district level, or even at the individual classroom level. And then when they take that assessment in the spring, we would hope that we've seen growth in some of those scores that we had identified as goals for the year. So my intention is to come back to you all regularly with, here's what we're seeing, here's kind of a report of what our assessment is telling us, and then here are our next steps and our plan for next year.
Typically, the assessment tool will be coming to you, the assessment presentation will come to you in the spring with any changes for the following year. And then you'll also in the spring get a data presentation in general that will talk about our NWEA and the growth and what our action steps are, as well as Sabres and kind of packaging that. I would like you to all have that information.
So just one question about the post-secondary planning in high school. So how do we, is there a test for the armed forces? I thought I read somewhere in MSIP 6 that there was. Is that the ASV?
That's the ASVAB.
It is, okay.
The Armed Services Vocational
Okay.
Assessment Battery, something like that.
Yes, that is the,
Yeah, so that, so the ASVAB is the, is the assessment that we would give to students who have interest in going to the
Okay.
military.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Great, okay, can I get a motion to approve the,
I make a motion that we approve the 24-25 assessment.
Second.
discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that is approved.
I have your,
Do I need to jump ahead? Are these out of order?
it does, they're on,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, we'll just jump to.
Multilingual learning.
All right,
There
do
we
that
go.
next, and then we'll come back to PD. Okay, multilingual learners update. So we have informed you all just that we're seeing some growth and some needs in supporting our multilingual learners. I first want to just start by explaining why we're using this term multilingual learners, and in the past probably English learners or English speakers of other languages. There have been many descriptors and acronyms that have been used over the years to identify this particular group of students. But when we say multilingual learners, we feel like that is really identifying these students as coming to us with this enormous asset of already speaking another language. And so we really want to be intentional that we are supporting those students to be successful in our English-speaking classrooms, but also honoring and celebrating the fact that they speak a language, or maybe more than one, besides English already. And since we are a district that offers the seal of biliteracy, also making sure we support those students to earn that seal so that by the time they are graduating with us, even if they didn't go through our French, German, or Spanish program, if they have proficiency in English and whatever their home language is, then they also can be eligible for that seal of biliteracy. Yeah. So this data comes from DESE. And this is our enrollment of multilingual learners since the year 2009. So we're a small district. You don't see, in terms of individual numbers, not huge changes over time, but definitely a trend that shows that we have growing numbers of multilingual learners over the past couple of decades. And that is both in the number that we serve, but then also as a proportion, as a percentage of our total enrollment. And so I think this is really a wonderful attribute of our community, but it is also not an attribute of only our community. The St. Louis region as a whole is seeing a lot of growth in families that are newly arrived to the United States that are settling in our region. And so supporting multilingual learners is, I would say, right now kind of a hot topic in the curriculum and instruction world, because a lot of districts are asking us some of the same questions we are, which is how do we make sure that we're preparing all of our teachers to best serve this population of students, and then also playing that role as the welcoming community, making sure that we've got, that we're prepared, whomever is interfacing with these families as they come to us, that they have the tools, whether it's they need a translation device or whatever it is, so that the families who come to us, many of whose the parents also are not proficient English speakers, that they feel welcome, that they feel they can adequately communicate with us. So a trend that's climbing and that I think is a really positive one that enhances our community. And here's a sample. These are languages currently spoken by Brentwood School District students. There's 16 on that list.
Where are we at numbers-wise for 2024?
So we currently have 36 students who are actively receiving support. That's a bit higher than I think what I reported to you a couple of weeks ago, because we've had some new arrivals since then. And of those 36, we've identified 13 as what we would call newcomers, which I'll explain like what that term means, because it's not a super clear definition of what we would consider newcomers. So, but first, one thing I just want to point out about this list here that I think is really special about Brentwood, but also certainly makes the challenge a little bit more significant, is that we don't have large groups of these students all speak this language. And so it's difficult because sometimes those students don't have those affinity groups here, but also we don't necessarily have staff who speak these languages. And so we really do have to use our community resources as much as possible to make sure that our students and our families feel welcome. So when we talk about newcomers here in Brentwood, there are a few ways that can be defined. So a simple way is, for example, our students who don't have, who are not required to take the MAP test. The state would say if you've been in the country less than a year, you don't have to take the MAP test in English. That's one way to define newcomers. We have students who have been here for more than 12 months that still, I would say, are struggling to proficiently use English in an academic setting, especially when we think about academic vocabulary that shows up in some of our middle and high school courses as students progress. It can be really challenging. And so we also use their scores on the Access screener test, the Access test. So the WIDA, the organization that writes Access, would say that a student is really a novice with the English language if they're scoring below a 2. Here in Brentwood, if our students are scoring below a 3, they still get a pretty significant level of support. So we currently, about a third of our students, and I just met with Kelly Wassman yesterday, she said typically, maybe a quarter to a third of our multilingual learners are in that newcomer level. And so in terms of the support that they need, what that really means is these students should have ongoing daily support from a multilingual learners specialist, an EL teacher, or, in this case, what we're trying to do is get support at this point in the school year of adding a TA position to help support that. Another challenge here in Brentwood is that these students are in 4 different buildings. So having one person to serve these students in 4 different buildings means that she is constantly on the go. Her schedule leaves very little room for any kind of flexibility. And so sometimes those students can be grouped to multi-grade level groups in one building if it's appropriate, but other times, a lot of times, it's Kelly Wassman pushing into the classroom to try to support students. So our goals moving forward, adding that TA is really going to help support just that one-on-one support with students. So a TA could work with our students whose language skills are a little bit more developed, but who still need that conversational piece, and then also especially the writing piece of being proficient in English. And what we would really like to build our teacher capacity to do is to also engage more as a coach of our classroom teachers. So because Kelly's the only one currently doing what she does, and there are a few dozen students she's trying to support, she obviously cannot be in the classroom with those students all the time. And so it's really important that we are able to use Kelly as a coach to build the capacity and skill set of our classroom teachers of, when I'm not here to support that student, here are some great strategies to use. Here are ways that you can modify the task that you're asking these students to do. And then along with that, which is like really a game changer that was not true even 10 years ago, is there's so much wonderful technology now that can help our students engage with the English language, even if they're not yet proficient in speaking or reading it. So we need to make sure that our students have access to curriculum and technology in order to help them acclimate and be successful and access our curriculum. So sometimes that's interpreters and translation services. Typically, interpreters we would be using for parent-teacher conferences and for state assessments are the most frequent times of year. Sometimes we have to have documents translated, but again, technology can do so much of that for us now that our families have become very savvy at how to use technology to translate things that we're pushing out to them. There are curriculum resources that Kelly has been sampling, especially what I'll call newcomer kits. So a student who comes to us with very limited English, they're newly arrived in the country, some interactive, engaging curriculum that they can work on to just help them navigate. I mean, truly, upon arrival, the priority is that these students feel safe and secure. And so help them navigate just getting through the school day. How do I go through the lunch line? Making sure they have a buddy. How do I ask a question of the teacher? What's my schedule? Creating a visual schedule for a student, because what we hand them, the schedule that's printed out from Infinite Campus, it's not going to make a whole lot of sense. So a lot of these strategies and curriculum resources, and then also specific translation technology. So the iPad works great, but we also have a few time kettle devices, which are earbuds that will do live translation, which is really cool. And then devices called Jarvisons, which look like little iPhones, but they can pick up what is being said and then translate it on the spot. So those will be helpful, especially with engagement with families that are coming into the campus.
Question.
Yeah.
Earlier it was mentioned about looking into different assessment technologies. Are the ones that are under survey, do they include these languages that we need to support? How does that work?
So not necessarily, and I think that's something that we'll look at, though. I would say the spectrum of supports and intervention supports that come with any of these assessment tools is going to be a significant part of our conversation. So how does it support intervention, various special education or 504 accommodations that our students might need. If it has a language piece, that's great. And then also what kind of specific curriculum feedback it gives to us so that we know how to then target whatever intervention or enrichment our students need next. So that will be part of the conversation for sure.
One of the challenges too is the students are required to, after they've been here for a year, they're required to take the math in English. So there's also, although you want to meet the child where they are, there's some other layers to that. So translating to their native language is not necessarily the route we want to go, but we want to be able to target and find. That's one of the challenges is whereas an academic, like the priority has to be developing the language first, but then there's that academic component that's a challenge as well. So those intervention pieces are huge. Figure out where are they from an academic standpoint. Very multi-layered.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which is why we wanted to present this, because we did bring the Monarch MOU back, because as you see as part of this, we wanted to put it in context as I put that in the weekend update, which I apologize again for not having all of this information. We felt that it makes more sense as part of a bigger conversation around this. But really the MOU, we do not have an MOU with our other service because you don't need one, but we get a discount. It gives us a discount and it adds more tools to our toolbox that if we need during testing season, during IEP season, when we're having transition IEPs, it's good to know that if one company can't provide the translation or the interpretation, we have another one in our back pocket. And by signing the MOU, we just get a discount, and we're able to, they are able to bill us after the fact instead of us prepaying. So it's an efficiency standpoint for us from a student perspective, so it's just adding those tools. So we do ask and that we approve that tonight.
All right. Can I get a motion for the
Yeah, I make a motion to approve the ML programs as outlined.
So it's to approve
Oh,
the
and
Monarch.
And
Yeah,
Monarch,
the ML,
yes, I'm sorry.
It's
Yep.
We don't need to approve the ML program.
No, the programs don't need it, just the
Oh.
Monarch MOU
Okay,
for the interpretation services.
all right, I'll make it again then. I make a motion to approve Monarch as outlined.
Second.
All right, discussion?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say, so I guess going back a little bit, the TA position to support, what languages is key for that individual? There's some languages up there I didn't even know existed, so
Yeah.
I'm curious what the ideal person is for that position, because it looks like we're kind of trending back towards 2019 when we had 45 students. And so if that's the case, having, first, I guess, like two-parter, is a TA enough? And two, do we need additional multilingual services out there that will help us with some of those other languages?
So based on DESE's recommended, I wouldn't even say their recommendations, basically their guidelines for staffing an English learners program is 20 students to one teacher. So we are currently well beyond that. The TA, I think ideally this would be another full-time teacher. It's just the time of year, it makes it difficult to hire a person with that, that level of qualification. And so that is why, should we get a candidate who is able to meet the needs that we need, no, they won't speak 16 languages.
Right, yeah.
In fact, they may only, be an English speaker, but it's really, what's more important is not that they can speak the home language of the student, but that they can help to modify tasks for students, that they can try to pull in some strategies that are maybe more visual for students as they're working on things, or in some cases even just help direct and guide those students to technology services that may exist for them to help them understand. So, in a perfect world, we would have support that would speak the home language of the student, but that's not always true. So I think, should we trend in this direction, I would imagine that having more than one FTE is going to be a need.
And that is very much true. Ronnie and I have talked about this a lot with Kelly Wasserman as well. With our numbers where they are and continually growing, it is definitely something that when we look at staffing in the spring, we'll want to have this conversation. At this time of year, we would not be able to hire someone. I wouldn't feel comfortable recommending putting out even for a full-time teacher because of what the pool would be. But I think a TA will help us as we're transitioning. I also think it is very rare that you have either your EL teacher or your ELTA speak a second language fluently. It is, to Ronnie's point, very much so that it's the ability to modify, the ability to know best practices when working with multilingual students and implementing those and being able to have that person as well to make the connection. And so we would expect them to speak, especially if you have a community where one language is predominant, it's easier to look for that, but with us, it wouldn't necessarily help anyway, which is why the other resources that we have are really important to be able to tap into as needed.
Can we also talk to Monarch about reaching out to our parents? Because I know in the past, there have been kids that haven't had to miss school because they were the one being able to speak English, and had sometimes sick parents, and so absences were excessive. So it would be really nice if we can also keep our kids in the classrooms and keep them learning, and then connect the parents to these resources so that the children are not burdened, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. I think that's a huge part of
possible in either of those services that we may come across with families speaking a language that they're not able to interpret for. But it's really just more of the odds are with the volume of families that we have that we would be best able to serve the majority of their needs if we had 2 services available to us.
And so just kind of going through the Monarch contract, the part that it wasn't really clear to me is, does the student need to be part of the Monarch immigrant program?
No.
To be able to
No.
get, so every student will be able to use Monarch services?
It's through us, so like the district would reach out to find if we would
Okay.
need it. So it's, we're working with them. They do not need to be a part of that
Okay.
program.
And so what other translation services have we looked at besides Monarch?
So the one that we've used historically is LAMP.
Yeah.
But
That's the one that I'm familiar with.
Monarch is just another,
Yeah.
I don't
Resources.
think there are very many of them
Yeah.
in St. Louis.
there may be other ones, but again, we're not making any, this is just another resource for us to add to the layer should we run out of.
I just want to make sure that we're doing our due diligence anytime we bring in an outside company. I think we owe it to everybody in the district to look at all of our options to see what is the best. So that's, I know, been pushing Monarch, pushing, but I just really would like to understand the why.
Yeah. And I understand. I've been there. To be frank, I'm not familiar with the array of interpreter services, and I'm happy to find out more. But I also would say that having a memorandum of understanding with Monarch does not take any of those other services off the table. So it's not that we would necessarily have to go with Monarch. LAMP we've used, I think, for years. I don't believe we have an MOU with LAMP. It's just a
No, 'cause they don't
service
have
that's
one.
widely used here in the St. Louis area. And so it would not exclude us from using other interpreter services if they better meet our needs or their pricing is more competitive.
We could, yeah, and add more. This is just trying to build a resource. If there are more available as we come across them, we can add them. It's just having this agreement with the idea that it would provide us a resource should LAMP not be able to provide one. Whoever can kind of help us in those moments.
There's a lot of immigrants. I mean, that's a big topic everywhere. So there's got to be something that's available within the city to assist school districts in some of this capacity as well, as opposed to an outsourced kind
Most districts use LAMP and use
Do they?
these kind of MOU processes to bring in people
of.
when they need them.
Are the prices of these very similar? Sorry if I missed that.
They're almost
Yeah.
identical.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, outside of, just established community connections, I'm not aware of a lot of free interpreter translation services. St. Louis is a welcoming community for a lot of immigrants, but and I think just in my experience as an educator, interpreters have consistently we've gone through a service that does that for a fee.
I think this is the first time it's been more prevalently explained to us, numbers, things like that.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, and all the times I've been here, I really didn't even know at one time we had 45 and now we had 36, So I think it's just,
We just wanted to share it as part
Right.
of a bigger picture of why the resources are helpful to us.
Right, any other discussion around the MOU? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that is approved.
Last but certainly not
Okay.
least is our
Let me
community
jump
plan.
back here. All right, 24-25 professional development plan. So, and this link will take you to the Google Doc that has all of this spelled out in more detail. But this is another plan that was built last spring but was not brought to the board so that we could make sure that there was full alignment with the new strategic plan. So this work comes out of the district professional development committee. And I had the pleasure of working with them a couple of weeks ago in a day-long workshop to shore up this plan for the year. It was a great day. And I think they've built a wonderful plan that was already aligned with the priorities of the strategic plan. And so I boiled it down here for you just to kind of show explicitly which goal for this school year we're aligned with and what our target areas are for the year. So historically, the PD plan has been a 2-year plan. The committee reached the decision in our meeting a couple of weeks ago that we really felt like 1 year at a time right now is where we need to be because a lot of this year's work is establishing baselines and goals so that we know then what work we need to continue in 25, 26. So this is the plan for this year. Much of this, like I said, was already underway, was already planned, but I think we streamlined it a bit so that we all felt like we weren't biting off more than we could chew in one school year. I think there was a great effort to try to meet all of the areas of the strategic plan, but then when we start to look at the PD calendar and the limited time we have available in a year, and making sure that we're aligned with what each school's building priorities are, that we targeted fewer areas with the knowledge that next year we can build on that. So for our diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility goal, this work is going to be done very much in collaboration with the equity committee that we are establishing to review what's happening in professional development and review our needs assessments and make sure that we are meeting the needs where our teachers feel like they need to build their capacity. So particularly in this year, you'll see supporting multilingual learners. Mark Twain took on this task last year. They had quite a bit of PD from Ed Plus and also from Kelly. They developed some resources, some strategies for teachers that they're now sharing more broadly with the rest of the district. So that will continue to be a focus. And then K through 8 have each building, elementary and middle, have a building focus on restorative practices and building classroom communities, and then progressing into what those kind of reparative harm repair practices can be when things maybe go a little sideways in the classroom. So that's work they've been doing for a few years that they're continuing this year. Student success. So here our goal, really kind of two pieces of the objectives under the student success priority: innovative teaching and learning, and then continuing to foster those individual pathways. So the high school for this year has a focus on cognitive science, which is really cool because it has tied in so nicely with our cross-curricular literacy effort as well. So as we probably shared with you during our back to school update, we had a group come in and present to our elementary and our secondary groups about literacy across the content areas and strategy, essentially how the brain learns literacy. And so really getting that deep scientific understanding of what is happening in students' brains as they are learning to read, write, speak, listen, and making sure that that understanding then shows up in practice in how we engage with students and how we teach them. Whether you are teaching math or foods or you're an ELA teacher, that these are strategies that work for all students. And so high school is going even deeper with that, and they're doing a lot of PD this year on learning and memory to help with student engagement, to help with longer term student learning. And so they are in October bringing in a cognitive scientist to speak to their staff, and they have a year-long goal of then embedding that into practice, and they'll have some cohorts that are specializing in different areas, and then they'll share their learning at the end of the year. So pretty exciting stuff. Standards-based learning, so this is ongoing from previous years. We are going to take some time this year to make sure we're all speaking a universal language on standards-based learning, revisit our standards, revisit our scales that we're using to measure those standards, continuing that work at the middle school level, 6th into 7th grade. And so Stacy Taylor, ELA coordinator, and I have been working a lot with middle school, and she's working a lot with elementary to take a look at that. Yes?
On that topic, I'm glad to hear there will be some longer-term focus on it. What about on the short term going into this year and supporting this first half of the year on this topic?
Yeah, great question. So we are, at the elementary level, we'll be having some grade level horizontal PLC meetings. And part of that, those are going to start happening this October, next month, to bring grade level teams together and take a look at their priority standards and how they're scoring those standards and how those show up in assessments and making sure that that alignment is happening. So the work is starting right now for this year, so that when our teachers meet in those, when I say horizontal PLCs, I mean from both elementary schools coming together as a grade level. That work is happening right now, and the intentions of those meetings is that you come together with something you're doing right now, we talk about it, we streamline it, we get aligned, we calibrate, and then immediately you can go then deploy that in your classroom.
What about middle?
Middle school is similar. So I've already been invited into a couple of PLCs at the middle school level. I have 2 more on my calendar to come in and review their standards and review their scales and make sure that there's alignment there.
She's also been working with the standards-based grading, which is slightly different.
Yeah.
The standards-based learning is the meaningful, deep, bigger work, but I know the standards-based grading, we both are well aware of some hiccups in the rollout, And Ronnie has luckily had some experience in the rollout, because Lindbergh's about a year ahead in that kind of rollout. So she's been working with teachers from really the minute she got here to help with some clarity, communication, supporting the teachers and making sure that we were implementing in a way that they felt comfortable, as well as that they felt comfortable being able to communicate with parents as to what these grades mean, because that's a huge part of where I feel that maybe some of the disconnect is being able to communicate with parents. And so it's not perfect, but the learning work has to happen for the grading work to work.
Yeah.
So we're in I think
We're rewinding a little bit
Yes.
some of what
Yes.
has played out previously to make sure that the prep work that needs to go into that true understanding and clarity for the student as well of here's a 4-point scale and here's what that means for me, and not just like, oh, I'm exceptional or I'm not, but really what does that mean I have learned? What does that mean I can do? And so that's, we've already had 2 sessions with middle school staff. They're excited, they're ready to go. We mapped out a timeline and several of them were like, can I move faster than that? So,
I'm in a good space.
yeah.
I guess my question is, high school is still a lot of grades.
Yeah.
Colleges are still a lot of grades. I feel like we have been on this topic for so long in our district, and it has not been a successful topic among teachers, parents, and kids. Why? I mean, do we really feel this is the way education is going to go, or are we really spending too much time on this because as soon as they get into high school, it goes back to the way it was, and when they get into college, it continues. I just don't see the purpose. I still have never seen the purpose between A, B, C's, and D's and these numbers, because I don't feel like it's going to.
I think those are very fair questions to ask. I would say in high school, the reporting goes back to a traditional letter grade, but standards-based learning is really what the focus of our, and that's why it's phrased that way on the slide, that's really the focus of our PD with teachers is, I mean, we can report A through F, 1 through 4, apples, bananas, oranges, whatever we want to call it. The reporting is what comes last once the clarity of what students are learning happens first. And so that is work that should be happening pre-K through 12. And so at the high school level and in 8th grade as well, the work with staff and with students is to be very clear about what are the levels of learning the standard. Like, what do I as a student need to show you as evidence that I've mastered that standard? Ultimately, if that shows up as a letter grade in high school, which it should, because to your point, that's what post-secondary is looking at, and that's what they understand. And by and large, that's what our parent community understands. So that's fine, but what it takes out of the equation is what I think in traditional school has always been the case, which is I show up and I'm quiet and I listen all day, and therefore I have an A at the end of the semester, whether I gave you evidence that I truly mastered that standard or not, or the reverse with, it takes behaviors and habits out of the grade, and it makes it very clear to students of what I need to know and do, and how I need to provide evidence of what I know and what I can do. And so ultimately, it should lead to higher levels of learning because the student is really owning their learning process, and it's very clear to them what they need to do next. The reporting is just a way that we're able to put that on paper to explain at the end of a term how far they've come in their learning.
That is where it has gotten messy. The learning part, there is research that shows the clarity around their learning objective, clarity around their learning has higher and better outcomes for kids. Reporting and grading is very different than learning, because that is a way to communicate with parents how their kids are doing. And what we're all used to is the traditional grading system. That gets muddied with the learning part, and I will say the learning part is very valid at the high school level, is making sure that kids are very clear on what they're learning and what they're capable of doing. And Ronnie and I, we're on the same page. I don't believe we should move our grades at the high school level away from traditional. But I do think there's some work that we can do, both of us with our experiences, that will hopefully help muddy some of the water, that will help distinguish those two and understand why the standards-based learning is worth the time, energy, and effort that we're putting into it.
And we had been doing that when this all started in elementary, in certain grades. So, because I'm not in that anymore, what is our K through 5 doing?
It's a standards-based learning. It's the standards-based
It
grades.
is.
And
Yeah,
standards-based
so they're
learning.
reporting out on
Maybe
It's
we're at the
transitioning
end
to
of the parents that didn't have it in elementary,
Yeah.
And we'll see some more.
Like
Stopped
we-
with Tommy. Tommy was rollout one in kindergarten, and he rolled it up every year. He is now in 8th grade, so every year his classes piloted it.
Yeah, my son's,
Yeah.
my second, yeah, he's in 7th grade, so yeah.
And it's now in 8th grade. I really value the distinction in the standards-based learning versus reporting, because that's a communication point that the community is missing, and telling you it's not communicated.
I feel that the whole.
And it sounds like you're saying there's some foundational work we need to do that
Yes.
we're focusing on
And-
first. That'll lead to better outcomes on the reporting side.
Mhm, absolutely. I feel very confident in where we are and with the plan that we have moving forward. It's not gonna be perfect, because we're resetting some things and, just helping support.
I love
teachers
hearing
open
the
more.
rewinding,
Yes, just
because I think that's a huge thing, and there's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with rewinding,
Yeah.
you know, and redoing, you know, and so.
And to Amy's point, the standards-based learning that we're emphasizing is very well grounded in research about how students learn and what leads to good outcomes. Student goal setting is huge. Students understanding what their outcomes should be and how to get there, and being able to map their course to that is huge. Like, there are decades of research that show us that student ownership of learning yields higher results. And that's really where we're trying to go. And again, the reporting is then just how do we inform our families of what that looks like at
It's
the
a
end of the term.
communication tool, not a learning tool.
And I know at South Tech, that's what they do, because my daughter only gets numbers,
Mhm.
never gets a letter.
Mhm. Okay. And I believe this is the last one, school culture. So third bucket for the district professional development committee was, what do we want to do when it comes to school culture? And so part of that will be the work we're doing with Savers assessment, effectively implementing that and then using that data to help enhance our school culture and build our students' habits and dispositions. And also, we want to make sure that we are continuing to celebrate our teacher growth. So here in Brentwood, our teachers are able to set individual professional growth plans each year based on their own targets for growth as practitioners. And so we want to make sure that we are celebrating that at the end of the year, giving those teachers opportunities to share how they've grown. There were some examples shared at the PDC meeting that were really fun. I know last year they did kind of a learning carnival and they brought in an ice cream truck. But it is really hard work that our teachers do all year long. And so I think also to make sure that we are building in some levity and some celebration and some fun of look at how we're asking our students to grow all year long, look at how we are growing too. So that's an intentional goal of the PDC this year. And then our early childhood staff has been working since last spring on practices of conscious discipline. And so this is just a way of engaging with our youngest learners to help them learn and grow in their social, emotional, and behavioral growth as well. And that is helping to build their school culture at the early childhood level.
I know when you talk about the diversity, equity, and inclusion, and you're talking about the multilingual learners, a lot of the colleges are throwing out the diversity, equity, and inclusion all across the United States. I'm seeing that left and right. So,
They're baking it into all the other strategic goals, right? Because calling out diversity, equity, inclusion, you're excluding, being able to hire the best candidate, and they're fitting that into a goal. So I think University of Missouri at Mizzou, I think by the end of this school year, they are doing that. They're taking out the diversity, equity, and inclusion from their goals. I think that's related to funding from Jeff City as well.
I know they did at UK this year as well. So I just was curious, are we seeing that as well at our level?
I think there's,
Just because professional development is such a huge thing, and it's so
Yes.
important,
Yes.
I want to make sure that
Yeah.
if there was other things that came up, if we're seeing this trend come back into this
I
level of
think it's the
education, should we be
label,
focusing
not
on
the
other?
work. So it's the label, not the work. I
Okay.
think the work, diversity is a gift that is given to us. We have a very diverse community. That is people that walk in the door. Equity is making sure that every child gets what they need. That's what schools have always tried to do. And inclusion is making sure that every child feels seen, heard, and valued. Unfortunately, fortunately, going in the political side of it, but the label has meant more than that and has become somewhat political, and that's where the funding is getting zapped in other places. But the work itself is the work that schools have always been committed to, and making sure that we continue that work is something that I feel very comfortable and confident in being able to continue, regardless of whatever label or whatever goes around us. I think it's the right work for us to invest in as a school.
I feel like we've always been doing it.
Yeah,
We should always
right.
be doing
Part
it.
of
We just-
the
We really
DNA
didn't need to
of the
call it
school.
out, like you said, it's been more of a political.
Yeah.
Well, and I will say, in the, doing the work, and even the work of the PDC, but also as we were creating our district level committees to carry out the work of the strategic plan, there's significant overlap between this priority and school culture. And so even in the PDC, as we were talking about our goals for PD for the year, we sometimes had a hard time saying, well, which column should we put it in? Because really they all contribute to the culture of the school. When you have a diverse population where everyone feels that they have equitable opportunities and included and they have access to learning, you have a great school culture. And so that overlap, I think we're going to see a lot as we carry out the work of the strategic plan. That often what we're doing falls into both columns.
On student success, which is individualized learning plans, which is by definition, right, equitable. So all of this work is so overlapping. I think it's very important.
Thank you. It's nice to see all.
PD plan?
Oh, next steps. Okay, sorry, wasn't my last slide. Gosh, you all are very patient. So, communication. That's really our next step when it comes to PD, making sure that we're communicating with the new committees that are doing the strategic plan work, that our PD reps are going back to their buildings and gathering that information from staff about what the needs are, and really streamlining and aligning all of the work so that we don't have any PD that is like a one-off here, but it's, kind of tangential to the strategic plan, but doesn't, is like a one-time deal versus really sustained, committed professional development to achieve the goals of the strategic plan. And so as part of that, we also just want to take a look this year at how do we allocate our PD budget and making sure that our budgeting is also aligned with our strategic plan priorities and the goals of the district, but then also leaving some autonomy for our buildings and how they need to meet their own building PD needs with their building PD budgets. So nothing on that front that is proposed or decided at this point, just that we want to take a look at how that budget is allocated.
And this one also needs to be approved.
I make a motion to approve the professional development plan as outlined.
Second.
Discussion.
These are great to see the goals and target areas. What about outcomes or metrics to demonstrate we're meeting these?
Mm-hmm.
Is that the next step?
That's the next step.
Yeah.
Yes.
Great.
And some of that too will be determined by the committees that say these are the committee goals. And so PD really is means to those goals. The PD itself is never really the goal. It's how do we get to the goals that are outlined in our strategic plan. So there will be a lot of alignment there that as we develop next year's plan, we'll be more specific with that.
Sorry, I'm done. I was just gonna ask, so just to follow up, what is the goal to get the goals? Like, what is your goal? What's your timeline look like for that?
So I'm going to go with the timeline of our committees, because again, there's so much collaboration. And if you open the Google Doc, that's the PD plan, you'll see that there are a handful of those that are in collaboration with the equity committee, and collaboration with the, whatever committee. Because those committees have specific goals that are in the strategic plan. So I think when I meet with the SEL committee and I say, we need to do some work on Savers, what's our timeline for fully onboarding staff and providing the PD for Savers, then that's going to translate into the PD plan. What does it take to get there? So, I would, like, the PD plan for next year should have those outcomes baked into it. Does that answer your question?
No.
No.
I guess I'm looking for
Like,
something a little bit more like concrete, like by December or by April or something
Yes.
of that nature. Like when do we want to get this finalized? When are we going to be able to have visibility and approve it?
Honestly, I'm not fully comfortable giving that answer yet because I haven't met with the committees to know
I love that answer.
how.
That's all you gotta say.
I don't-
get it.
I can tell you something. I just can't promise I could deliver by
No, I
December.
get it.
Because especially when it comes to onboarding staff and building capacity, we got to look at the PD calendar. We may want to do 3 hours of PD on Sabres data, but that's not going to fit into the calendar this year. So, I can assure you by spring, that's all determined.
Sure.
Yeah.
Any other discussion or questions? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Right, that one is approved. Thank you. You made it. Ms. Laura.
You all made it as well.
moves us into our Board of Education parts. Any MSBA delegate report, Keith?
Well, as the annual conference is coming up, there will be a delegate meeting. I think the agenda's pretty light. There's 3 actions on advocacy positions, which I think are non-controversial. One is a new one saying that MSBA supports school districts limiting cell phone use. So that's good.
That's great.
Aligned with what
Seems
we're
like that
looking
should go without saying. But I guess as an example, see what these advocacy positions are, it's a roadmap for the lobbyists to follow so that the positions they take with legislators are consistent with what the position is. And so they could say, if some legislator for some reason gets some wild idea that free speech requires unlimited use of cell phones by anybody at any time, any place, they can say that they have MSBA's position that, having restrictions on that makes sense. So anyway, and then there's something about funding for free school lunches. I'm not quite sure what's provoking that, but and then also a clarification on voucher sorts of programs that MSBA's position has been that they don't support them. If this change is made, we don't support them if they don't include any accountability to the state like any school does, which I think makes sense. And that's really I think that's pretty much all the agenda. Was it last year you got to be the delegate, and was that last year or the year before? I just ran into this.
The year before, I think, because you were, or maybe both years, I don't know. I feel like I've been there twice.
Just all these stupid proposals and amendments that got really out of hand. But anyway, hopefully that won't happen again. And that's about it.
Great. And then we've got board committee updates. So I think our committees are going to be meeting in October. We put out the invitation to the community and to staff if they wanted to participate on any of the board committees that we have. And so I think the plan
That
is to meet
closed
October.
Friday, and then I shared with cabinet members who are serving as kind of the leaders of each of the board advisory committees, and then they'll be reaching out to the members of the board that are on their committees to sit down, look at who's on their list, and then start developing that first agenda for that first meeting. So you should be hearing from Ronnie, Tony, and myself, and Matt.
So they'll
And
they'll
to
look at
schedule
the
a meeting to
applicants
have a
and they'll
meeting.
pick- 'cause did we do it the first year? Did we look at all of the parents and then we picked them?
I would say that we do not have such an overwhelming number that we need to split hairs on that, but
I
there's,
think everyone who applied last time too also was on a committee.
the good news is we had good, everybody has some community members, like all 4 of the committees have people that are interested, which is great. But, it's maybe 2 or 3, which is actually, I think, a good number. And we have a couple staff members for each of the board advisories too, which I think is also really good. So I think it'll be a good representation, but, so you should be hearing in the next week, I think I sent in the email to have them reach out to you all to have that kind of pre-planning meeting. And then we'll have the first one hopefully mid-October, late October. You can kind of timeline that out with what works for everybody's schedules and then develop according to the strategic plan.
Okay.
Information.
And then may I clarify, it says that the board policy meeting's on October 1st at 6:30.
It should be 7. We did not have it closed, so we'll stick with our normal 7 o'clock time.
Thank you.
Okay, and then Keith mentioned the fall conference. There's a symposium offered ahead of time if anyone is interested.
I'll be
Dr.
to the
Zelensky will
AI.
be going to the AI.
I will. I had to do some finagling with my husband to go to Kansas City Wednesday night, but I will be there bright and early Thursday morning.
Okay, if I could have a motion to adjourn to closed session.
I move that we adjourn and go to closed session. Second.
Okay, if we could do roll call, please, Keith.
Mark Cicerone,
Here.
Brian Dodson,
Yes.
Brian Flynn,
Yep.
Keith Ravenberg,
Yep.
Katie Small,
Yes.
Lindsey Spencer,
Yes.
Gary Trustle.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all.
Yeah, thank you.
Shadows.